Hello there, and welcome to Life Beyond Scene, where curiosity settles down, the world grows quiet, and science takes its time telling us what is really going on beneath the surface. Tonight, we are drifting toward a subject with a rather sharp reputation. Not stars, not sleep, not the edge of the universe, but a river fish with triangular teeth, powerful jaws, and a public image so dramatic that it has probably done more work for horror movie trailers than most actors ever will. Tonight, we are talking about piranhas, and more specifically, what really happens during a piranha feeding frenzy. Now, that phrase alone tends to wake the imagination up a little. Feeding frenzy. It sounds like something that should come with loud music, splashing water, and perhaps one unfortunate explorer dropping his sandwich in the wrong part of the Amazon. We picture a calm river suddenly boiling, silver bodies flashing, teeth cutting, water turning chaotic in a matter of seconds. The image is so strong that even people who have never seen a piranha in real life often feel they know exactly what one does. It waits, it smells blood, it gathers its friends, and then, in one terrible moment, it strips everything down to the bone. But nature is rarely as simple as its most frightening stories. It usually has more patience than that. It works by hunger, timing, signals, opportunity, fear, and habit. A piranha feeding frenzy is not just mindless violence. It is not a magical switch that turns a quiet fish into a tiny underwater chainsaw. It is a chain of events. It begins with a cue in the water, a smell, a vibration, a struggling animal, a piece of meat, a fish that is injured, trapped, weak, or already dead. Then one piranha investigates, then another, then the water grows busy. The moment can look wild from above, but beneath the splashing there is biology at work, and biology, even when it has teeth, usually has reasons. So before we go any farther, let me ask you something gently. Where are you listening from tonight? And what is the nearest river, lake, sea, pond, or little patch of water near you? Maybe there is a canal outside your town, a quiet stream you pass on walks, a dark harbour with lights trembling on the surface, or maybe just a glass of water beside your bed, thankfully free of South American fish. Water has a way of holding stories. It hides things from view. It carries smells, sounds, and movement. It can look peaceful from the bank while an entire world of feeding, fleeing, resting, and waiting unfolds just a few inches below. And that is where our story belongs. Not in the noisy version of the piranha that lives in posters and movie scenes, but in the real water, where these fish are part of a much bigger system. They are predators, yes, they are scavengers too. They are prey for larger animals. They live among currents, roots, flooded forests, insects, mud, fallen fruit, small fish, and the endless daily negotiations of survival. A piranha is not sitting in the river thinking about its reputation. It does not know it has become a symbol of instant danger. It is mostly concerned with staying alive, finding food, avoiding bigger mouths, and not wasting energy on anything that does not seem worth the trouble. If you find this kind of slow look at the natural world soothing, interesting, or just a peaceful way to let the day loosen its grip, I would be ever so grateful if you gave the video a like and maybe subscribed. It helps this quiet little place reach other curious night wanderers who enjoy learning something strange without being shouted at. And if the word piranha seems a little less sleepy than usual, do not worry. We are not here to startle you. We are here to understand. A thing becomes much less frightening when you can see its parts clearly. Even a mouthful of sharp teeth looks different when you learn what it is for, when it is used, and how often the stories about it have been polished into something far larger than the fish itself. The piranha's reputation is a curious creature in its own right. In many people's minds, it is less like a fish and more like a floating set of teeth with an attitude problem. It has been described as ruthless, bloodthirsty, unstoppable, and other words usually reserved for villains who own dramatic capes. But most piranhas do not spend their days hunting large animals. Many species eat a mixed diet: fish, fins, insects, crustaceans, worms, carrion, seeds, fruit, and bits of plant material can all appear on the menu, depending on the species, the season, and what the river makes available. This does not make them harmless, it makes them normal animals, which is sometimes more interesting than making them monsters. A real feeding frenzy is usually not random. It often depends on concentration. If fish are packed into a smaller space, especially during periods when water levels drop and food becomes harder to find, competition can rise. If something wounded or dead enters the water, the smell and movement can attract attention. If one fish bites, others nearby may respond. In the tight space of shallow, warm, food-limited water, that response can build quickly. From the bank it can seem as if the river has suddenly become angry, but the river is not angry. The fish are responding to opportunity, and in nature, opportunity rarely waits politely with a napkin in its lap. Think of a crowded dinner table where everyone is hungry, except everyone is underwater. No one has elbows and the cutlery is attached to their faces. That is not a perfect comparison, but it gets us somewhere. When food appears in a place where many hungry mouths can reach it, calm manners are not always the best survival strategy. A piranha that hesitates may lose the meal to another piranha. A fish that rushes in, takes a bite, and moves away may get enough energy to last. The behaviour can look frantic because the window is brief. Food in a river does not stay food for long. It drifts away, sinks, gets taken, or attracts something larger. In that sense, a frenzy is not madness. It is speed under pressure. Still, it is important to start gently, because this topic has carried a lot of exaggeration. There are real piranha bites, there are real injuries, there are real feeding events that look intense and unpleasant, especially when an animal carcass is involved. But the classic image of piranhas constantly attacking any large living creature that enters the water is not the ordinary everyday truth. In many parts of South America, people live, fish, wash, wade, and travel near waters where piranhas also live. That does not mean one should treat them like bath toys, of course. It simply means that reality is more specific than fear. The conditions matter, the species matters, the season matters, the behaviour of the animal in the water matters. The piranha is not a curse with fins, it is a fish with senses, hunger, caution, and a set of tools that happen to be very good at cutting. Those tools are worth respecting. Piranha teeth are not decorative. They are sharp, triangular, and arranged in a way that helps them slice flesh, nip fins, and tear pieces from food. Their jaws can close with remarkable force for an animal of their size. If you were designing a small freshwater fish to take efficient bites from slippery prey, you would probably end up with something uncomfortably close to a piranha. There is a neatness to the design, even if it is not the sort of neatness one wants near a toe. But again, teeth alone do not tell the whole story. A kitchen knife can cut, but that does not mean it spends the night plotting against the vegetables. The question is not only what piranhas can do, the question is when they do it, why they do it, and what cues turn a quiet shoal into a fast-moving crowd. A feeding frenzy often begins before anything dramatic is visible. Water carries information. A struggling fish sends vibrations through the current. Blood or tissue releases chemical cues that spread outward. A dead animal in the water begins to leak scent. A wounded creature moves differently from a healthy one. Piranhas can notice these changes. They do not need spooky intentions. They need senses that work well in murky water, where sight may be limited and quick decisions matter. In clear air, we look across a room and see what is happening. In a river, especially one full of silt, roots, shadows, and floating material, information arrives through smell, pressure changes, sound, and motion. The water itself becomes the message. Imagine sitting in a dark room with a plate of warm food somewhere nearby. You cannot see it, but you can smell it. Then you hear someone else move toward it. Then another person. Suddenly, the room feels very busy. That is not exactly what happens in a river, but it gives us a simple way into the idea. Piranhas are not reacting to one single thing in isolation. They are combining signals. A scent may draw them closer. A vibration may suggest vulnerability. The movement of other fish may confirm that food has been found. Once one bite happens, the event can accelerate. More scent enters the water, more motion appears, more fish arrive. The process feeds on itself, which is probably why humans gave it the dramatic name feeding frenzy in the first place. We do love naming things as though nature has hired a publicity department. Yet even in that fast moment, the fish are not necessarily acting as one organised army. A shoal can look coordinated from above, but each individual is still making its own decisions. Move in, bite, move away. Avoid being bitten by another fish. Find another opening. Stay close enough to feed, but not so close that the chaos becomes dangerous. That last part matters. Frenzies are risky for the piranhas as well. When many sharp-mouthed animals rush around the same food source, accidents are possible. A piranha can injure another piranha. A larger predator can be drawn to the commotion. A bird, caiman, river dolphin, or bigger fish may notice the same signs. In the wild, eating is rarely a relaxed activity. It is usually a balance between getting energy and not becoming someone else's energy. This is one reason the movie version misses something important. It treats the piranha as pure attack, but animals often survive by caution as much as boldness. Many piranhas school not because they are planning grand assaults on anything with a pulse, but because groups can offer protection. A small fish in open water is a meal with a tail. A group of fish is harder for a predator to single out. Schooling can confuse attackers, reduce individual risk, and help fish locate food more efficiently. So when we see many piranhas together, it does not automatically mean they have formed a villainous committee. They may simply be doing what many fish do, staying near others because the river is full of things larger than themselves. The phrase feeding frenzy also makes the moment sound as though it lasts longer than it usually does. In many cases it is brief, a rush, a burst, a churning patch of water, then the event fades as the food is reduced, moved, or scattered. Energy rises quickly and falls quickly. The fish do not keep boiling the river for theatrical effect. Once the immediate opportunity is gone, the shoal may spread out again. The surface smooths. The river returns to looking like nothing happened, which is perhaps one of the more unsettling things about water. It can hide a full drama and then go back to reflecting the sky as if it has no idea what you're talking about. And now, as we settle into this topic properly, it helps to put aside two easy mistakes. The first is thinking piranhas are harmless because the myths are exaggerated. They are not harmless. A bite from a piranha can be serious. Their teeth and jaws deserve respect. The second mistake is thinking they are constant killers because their teeth are impressive. They are not that either. They are opportunistic fish living in complex rivers. They eat what they can, when they can, in ways shaped by hunger, season, competition, and risk. A feeding frenzy is real, but it is not the everyday personality of the animal. It is a situation, a response, a particular set of conditions coming together in a particular place. That distinction may sound small, but it changes the whole story. Once we stop asking, are piranhas monsters, we can start asking better questions. What draws them in? What role does smell play? How do vibrations travel through water? Why does one bite lead to another? Why are some species more aggressive than others? What happens during the dry season when pools shrink and fish crowd together? What do piranhas eat when no dramatic carcass falls into the river? And how did a group of ordinary, fascinating, sometimes fearsome freshwater fish become one of the most misunderstood animals on Earth? The answer begins with reputation, because reputation is often the first thing we meet before we meet the animal itself. Long before most of us learn about the Amazon's flooded forests, river channels, food webs, or seasonal changes, we learn the piranha as an idea, a little fish that can reduce something large to bones, a mouth moving through the water, a warning in stories. It is almost too perfect as a symbol because it is small and frightening at the same time. A shark is large enough that its danger makes immediate sense. A crocodile looks ancient and heavily armoured, but a piranha is compact. It can fit in an aquarium. It can flash past like any other fish. Then it opens its mouth, and suddenly the room pays attention. So tonight we are going to slow that image down. We are going to take the feeding frenzy apart piece by piece, without rushing, without turning the river into a horror scene, and without pretending the teeth are not there. We will look at the real fish behind the reputation, the senses that guide it, the conditions that make group feeding possible, and the myths that have followed it from the Amazon into newspapers, films, aquariums, and late-night imaginations. Somewhere along the way, the piranha may become less of a monster and more of what it truly is, a sharp, nervous, efficient animal doing its best in a world where everyone is trying to eat, avoid being eaten, and make it through another day beneath the moving water. For now, picture a quiet river at dusk. Not a dangerous river, not a safe river, just a real one. The air is warm, insects move near the surface, roots reach down from the bank. Small fish hold their positions in the current, correcting themselves with tiny movements. Somewhere nearby, a fruit drops from a branch and makes a soft sound in the water. Somewhere else, a wounded fish struggles for a moment too long. The river notices not as a mind, but as a network of signals. Scent spreads, ripples travel, bodies turn, and in the dim water a fish with a silver side and a red belly changes direction. Nothing has happened yet, at least nothing that would make a dramatic splash on the surface. But the first part of the story has already begun. That silver-sided fish turning in the dim water has a problem that is not of its own making. It has teeth, yes. It has a bite that deserves respect. It can move quickly when food appears, and in the right conditions, a group of piranhas can make a river surface look suddenly busy. But long before we ever meet the real animal, we usually meet the legend. And the legend is much louder. The reputation of the piranha is one of the strangest things about it. Not because the fish is gentle exactly. Nobody needs to tuck one under an arm and call it misunderstood in the way one might defend a slightly rude house cat. A piranha is a serious little fish. It has strong jaws, it has sharp teeth. It can remove a piece of flesh with unnerving efficiency. But the story most people carry around is not simply that piranhas can bite. It is that piranhas are always ready to attack, that they are waiting in the brown water like a tiny army, and that the moment anything living enters their world, they become a cloud of knives with fins. That image did not come from nowhere. It grew from real observations, half-observations, travel writing, stage demonstrations, campfire retellings, newspaper exaggerations, and later, cinema. Humans are very good at turning an animal into a symbol. A wolf becomes hunger in the forest. A shark becomes danger in the sea. A snake becomes hidden threat in the grass. A piranha, because it is small, quick, and armed with teeth that look almost too neat to be real, became panic in the river. There is something especially powerful about a frightening animal that is not large. A crocodile announces itself. A jaguar has shoulders, claws, and the kind of face that makes the warning obvious. Even a shark, when seen from below, carries a certain shape that says, rather clearly, perhaps do not swim closer. But a piranha is not enormous. Many are small enough that you could imagine one being unremarkable in a tank until it turns sideways and opens its mouth. The fear comes partly from the mismatch. Such a small body, such serious teeth. It is as if nature built a pocket-sized can opener and then taught it to swim. The name itself has helped. Piranha. It is short, sharp, and easy to say with a little dramatic weight. It does not sound like a fish that eats fallen fruit. Even though some piranhas and their close relatives do eat plant material, it sounds like something that ought to arrive with a warning sign. Names matter. Once an animal has a name that feels dangerous, every story about it becomes a little easier to believe. Nobody hears the word piranha and imagines a quiet creature taking cautious bites at a seed, or nibbling at fins, or hiding from a larger predator. We imagine the teeth first, then we build the rest of the animal around them. One of the most famous boosts to the piranha's reputation came from Theodore Roosevelt's journey through South America in the early 20th century. Roosevelt was many things at once: former president, hunter, writer, explorer, naturalist, and a man who did not seem naturally drawn to understatement. During his travels in Brazil, he witnessed piranhas feeding in a way that seemed astonishingly violent. The story that followed helped shape how the wider public imagined these fish for generations. In accounts often repeated afterward, piranhas were portrayed as exceptionally ferocious, capable of stripping meat from animals with shocking speed. But the scene was not just a simple window into normal daily life in the river. The fish involved had reportedly been trapped and deprived of food before the demonstration, which matters enormously. If you confine hungry animals, crowd them together, and then introduce meat, you are not watching ordinary behaviour. You are watching hunger under artificial pressure. That does not mean the teeth were fake or the feeding did not happen. It means the lesson drawn from it was too broad. It's a little like locking a room full of people in a kitchen for 2 days, tossing in one pizza, and then writing a book called Humans, the most savage diners on Earth. That, in many ways, is how reputations are made. A real event occurs. It is dramatic. It is described in strong language. The conditions around it are forgotten, simplified, or pushed into the background. Then the dramatic part survives because it is easier to tell. Hungry piranhas in a confined space ate very quickly after being prepared for a demonstration is accurate but not especially thrilling. Piranhas can devour anything in seconds is inaccurate but extremely portable. It travels well, it fits neatly into headlines, it makes children lean forward and adults say, "Good heavens," which is usually how a myth knows it has found a comfortable home. From there, the piranha became useful to storytellers. It could appear in adventure tales as a river hazard. It could be dropped into films as an instant disaster. It could be mentioned by a guide in a jungle story and immediately raise the stakes. This is a convenient kind of animal for fiction because it needs almost no explanation. You do not have to spend 5 minutes telling the audience why the fish is dangerous. You just say piranhas, and the audience supplies the rest. The water is suddenly not water anymore. It is a threat with ripples. The trouble is that the real animal gets squeezed smaller and smaller beneath the story. Most piranhas do not spend their lives waiting to skeletonize large animals. Many are opportunistic feeders. That word, opportunistic, is not as exciting as bloodthirsty, but it is much more useful. It means they eat what conditions make available: a wounded fish, a dead animal, insects, aquatic invertebrates, bits of flesh, fins from other fish, fruit or plant material when that is part of the available diet. Some species are more carnivorous than others. Some relatives are heavily plant-eating. The group is more varied than the legend allows. Legends dislike variety. They prefer a single picture. In the piranha's case, the single picture is teeth in a group. That image has hidden almost everything else. It hides the fact that many piranhas are prey themselves. It hides the fact that schooling can be a defensive behaviour rather than proof of organised attack. It hides seasonal changes in food supply. It hides the ordinary business of fish life, which is mostly about not wasting energy, not being eaten, and finding enough food without turning every hour into a crisis. In real rivers, piranhas are not the only animals with plans. Caimans patrol, river dolphins hunt. Larger fish move through channels and flooded forests. Birds strike from above. Snakes, otters, turtles, and humans all form part of the same broad system of risk and opportunity. A piranha may be dangerous to smaller animals, weak animals, injured animals, or careless fingers, but it is not at the top of everything. It is living in a world where being small enough to be swallowed is a daily fact. That changes how we should imagine it. Less villain, more nervous professional. The teeth are still important, of course. We should not swing too far in the other direction and turn piranhas into misunderstood river puppies. Their jaws and teeth are a serious part of their biology. They are shaped for cutting. Many species have triangular teeth that interlock in a clean, efficient way. The bite does not need to be huge to matter. A small animal with a very effective cutting tool can do a lot quickly, especially when it takes a bite and moves away. That is one reason the piranha's feeding style seems so alarming to humans. We are used to predators that grab and hold, or chase and swallow. Piranhas can take pieces. That is a different kind of unpleasant. This peace-taking behaviour also feeds the reputation. If an animal bites once and leaves, the injury may still be dramatic. If several fish do the same thing in quick succession, the result can look like a coordinated assault. But coordination is not always the same as planning. A crowd of feeding fish may be reacting individually to the same signals: scent, movement, competition, and the actions of nearby fish. The surface result looks organised because the same conditions are pushing many bodies toward the same target. There is no need to imagine a meeting was held beneath a lily pad. Another reason piranhas gained such a fierce reputation is that feeding events are visually dramatic. A grazing animal can eat for hours and barely disturb a field. A piranha feeding event can turn a small patch of water into flashes, splashes, bubbles, and sudden movement. Humans are visual creatures. We remember motion. We remember noise. We remember moments that seem to break the calm. If a river sits quietly for an hour and then churns for 20 seconds, the 20 seconds becomes the story. Nobody writes breathlessly about the hour when nothing attacked anything. The same thing happens with many feared animals. A shark may pass thousands of swimmers without incident, but the rare attack becomes the headline. A snake may avoid contact nearly every day of its life, but the bite becomes the identity. A piranha may spend much of its time feeding on ordinary foods, avoiding danger, and moving through muddy water with caution. But the feeding frenzy becomes the whole animal in the public mind. Fear has a way of editing out boring behaviour, and most animal behaviour, if we are honest, is wonderfully boring. Resting, waiting, moving, testing, eating something small, avoiding something large, repeating as needed. There is also the matter of water itself. Land animals are easier to understand because we can watch them from our own world. A deer runs, a fox pauses, a bird lands on a fence. We can see enough to form a reasonable guess about what is happening. Rivers are harder. Water hides bodies. Murky water hides them even more. When something happens below the surface, we often see only the effect. A ripple, a splash, a dark shape, a sudden flash of silver. The hiddenness gives imagination room to work, and imagination is rarely conservative when teeth are involved. In South American rivers, the water can be stained by tannins, clouded with silt, broken by roots, plants, shadows, and floating debris. A fish may be close without being visible. That invisibility is a large part of the fear. We're not only afraid of piranhas, we're afraid of what we cannot see touching us in the water. A harmless leaf brushing the ankle can become a full personal emergency if the mind has recently been informed that piranhas exist. The body reacts before reason has had a chance to put on its slippers. This is why the piranha's reputation became so easy to export. People far from the Amazon did not need detailed knowledge of tropical river ecology to feel the fear. They only needed the idea of hidden teeth in water. That idea works in almost any culture because humans have always had a complicated relationship with dark water. We need water. We travel on it. We fish from it. We bathe in it. We also know that when the surface hides what is below, we are not fully in control. Add a small fish that can bite cleanly. and the imagination does the rest with far too much enthusiasm. Films and television took that imagination and gave it a soundtrack. In many screen versions, piranhas are not animals responding to conditions. They are a moving disaster. They appear in clouds. They attack instantly. They leave behind bones with the tidiness of a museum display. The scenes are designed to be exciting, not educational, which is fine as long as everyone remembers the difference. But repetition has an effect. If a person sees the same dramatic image often enough, it begins to feel like common knowledge. At that point, the myth no longer needs evidence. It has become familiar, and familiar things can feel true even when they are mostly theatrical. The real world is slower and more specific. Piranha bites on humans do happen, especially in some areas and under certain conditions. People may be bitten when fish are nesting, when water levels are low, when food is scarce, when scraps are thrown into the water, or when toes and fingers are presented in ways that trigger investigation. But serious attacks are not the constant, ordinary expectation that popular stories imply. Many local people understand the risks in practical terms. They know when and where to be cautious. They know that behaviour changes with season and setting. That kind of knowledge is quieter than legend, but it is usually more accurate. A reputation made from distance often misses the local details. From far away, the Amazon becomes one big dangerous river. In reality, it is a vast system of rivers, tributaries, floodplains, lakes, forests, channels, dry season pools and wet season expansions. Water rises and falls, habitats change, fish move, food appears and disappears. A behaviour that is possible in one setting may be unlikely in another. A hungry group in a shrinking pool during a difficult period is not the same as scattered fish in a flooded forest where food is abundant. But myths flatten landscapes. They turn whole ecosystems into a single warning label. It is worth pausing on that idea because it explains so many misunderstandings about animals. We often judge creatures by their most extreme behaviour. The strongest bite, the fastest attack, the most dramatic feeding event. But an animal is not only what it can do under pressure, it is also what it does on ordinary days. For the piranha, ordinary days may include searching for small prey, nipping fins, scavenging, hiding, staying with a group, responding to seasonal food, and avoiding larger predators. The feeding frenzy is real, but it is not the whole biography. The word frenzy itself is part of the problem. It suggests loss of control. It suggests madness. But in biology, fast feeding can be sensible. If food is limited and competition is high, speed matters. If scent is spreading and other fish are arriving, hesitation has a cost. If the food source may drift away or be taken by something larger, each bite is a small race against the situation. From our view, the water looks chaotic. From the fish's view, if we can use that phrase carefully, the behaviour may be a practical response to a brief opportunity. Of course, practical response to a brief opportunity is not going to sell many movie tickets. Frenzy will. This is another reason the piranha's image became so durable. The dramatic language is sticky. Once an animal is attached to words like savage, killer, swarm and frenzy, each new mention reinforces the old picture. Even when documentaries correct the myth, they often begin by showing the myth, because the myth is what draws attention. The fish becomes trapped in its own publicity. A difficult thing, presumably, for any creature without a press agent. There is a funny imbalance here. Many animals eat in ways that would seem horrifying if filmed closely enough. A heron swallowing a fish whole is not especially gentle. A praying mantis eating another insect is not Tea Party. Otters, dolphins, ants, wasps, eels, and countless other creatures do things that would make a bedtime story take a sudden turn. But piranhas have been singled out because their feeding can become collective, and because their teeth are easy to understand. A tooth is a simple symbol. We see it and know what it means. Yet the more closely we look, the less simple the symbol becomes. Teeth can cut fruit. Teeth can nip fins. Teeth can tear carrion. Teeth can defend. Teeth can help an animal survive in a crowded, competitive river. They are not a moral statement. Nature does not hand out sharp teeth only to villains. It hands them out to animals that need sharp teeth. The piranha did not choose to become a warning in human stories. It evolved a set of features that work in its environment, and then humans arrived with notebooks, cameras, fears, and a gift for exaggeration. This does not mean we should dismiss the awe people felt when they first saw piranhas feed intensely. Imagine encountering such a sight without modern context. A carcass enters the water, the surface breaks, small fish flash and bite, pieces vanish, the speed is unsettling. If you're used to thinking of fish as quiet, slippery things that nibble or dart away, this is a very different performance. It would be natural to describe it strongly. It would be hard not to. The mistake comes later, when the strong description becomes the standard description, and the standard description becomes the only description. The reputation also grew because piranhas are easy to demonstrate in captivity under feeding conditions. An aquarium full of hungry piranhas given food will gather attention. People watching from the safe side of the glass can see the teeth and movement clearly. It is dramatic, controlled, and memorable. But captivity can distort behaviour, especially when feeding is timed, space is limited, and the animals have learned that food appears in a particular way. Again, real behaviour is present, but the setting matters. The glass tank is not the whole river. The scheduled feeding is not the whole life. If we want to understand a piranha feeding frenzy honestly, we have to keep two thoughts in the mind at once. First, piranhas are capable of intense group feeding, and their bite is real. Second, the popular image of them as constantly aggressive, human-seeking river monsters is not a fair description of their normal behaviour. Holding both thoughts is less dramatic than choosing one, but it is much closer to science. Science often asks us to give up the satisfying simplicity of a scary story and replace it with details. Details are not always as exciting at first, but they last longer. There is something almost restful in that, even with a subject full of teeth. Once we learn the details, the fear becomes more specific. Specific fear is easier to handle than vague fear. There are piranhas somewhere in the water and they attack everything, is a foggy kind of alarm. Certain species under certain conditions, especially when food, injury, crowding, nesting or scarcity are involved, may bite or feed rapidly, is still worth respecting, but it gives the mind something solid to hold. It turns panic into caution, and caution is much more useful than panic, especially near water. So the reputation of the piranha is not entirely false, but it is badly stretched. The teeth are real, the feeding events are real, the danger in particular situations is real. But the monster built around those facts is much larger than the fish. It has been fed for more than a century by travel accounts, staged scenes, dramatic language, film, rumour, and our natural unease about hidden water. The real piranha has been living underneath all of that, doing what animals do while the legend swims above it with a louder splash. And now that the legend has been allowed to make its noise, we can let it settle a little. The next useful step is to meet the fish itself, not the movie version, not the headline version, but the living animal. Its body shape, its senses, its teeth, its social behaviour, its caution, its appetite, and the daily choices that make it far more interesting than a simple river villain. Because before a feeding frenzy begins, before the water churns, before the first bite is taken, there is just a fish in a river, built by evolution, surrounded by risk, and paying close attention to whatever the current brings next. Before the first bite, before the surface breaks, before anyone on the riverbank has time to say something deeply unhelpful like, "Is that normal?" there is the fish itself, and the fish itself is much more interesting than the reputation. The reputation gives us a mouth. Biology gives us an animal, a real body, a real nervous system, a real set of habits shaped by millions of ordinary decisions made in moving water. Where to hide, when to feed, when to follow, when to flee, when to risk a bite and when to let the moment pass, which, if you think about it, is a skill many of us could use at a buffet. The piranha most people imagine is usually based on the red-bellied piranha, one of the better-known species, with its deep body, silver-grey sides and reddish-orange belly that seems designed to be noticed. It is not a long, sleek predator like a barracuda, built for open water speed and dramatic pursuit. It is deeper, stronger-looking, with a body that feels compact and muscular. There is a certain practicality to its shape. It can turn quickly. It can hold position in currents. It can move among roots, plants, flooded branches, and the uneven spaces of a river that is rarely as open and simple as an aquarium tank makes it seem. It is a fish made for a complicated place, and that place matters. Piranhas are freshwater fish of South America, found in river systems, floodplains, lakes and channels where water levels can change dramatically with the seasons. To understand the fish, we need to imagine not one fixed habitat, but a world that expands and contracts. During wetter periods, rivers may spill into forests, turning the bases of trees into underwater neighbourhoods. Fish can move through places that, at another time of year, would be dry ground, leaf litter, and the occasional deeply confused ant. Fruit falls into the water, insects drop from branches. Small fish spread out into flooded areas. Food can be scattered, varied, and sometimes abundant. Then the dry season can pull the water back. Pools shrink, channels narrow, animals crowd together. Food may become harder to find. The same fish living in the same general region can face very different conditions depending on the month. This is one of the reasons the simple monster story fails so quickly. A piranha does not live in a constant state of attack. It lives in a changing river. Its behaviour changes because the river changes. When water is high and food is spread through flooded habitat, there may be more options. When water is low and fish are concentrated, competition becomes sharper. The animal does not need to be evil for its behaviour to become intense. It only needs to be hungry, crowded, and presented with a chance. Now, the teeth deserve their moment because pretending not to notice them would be rather like pretending not to notice a grand piano in a cupboard. Piranha teeth are sharp, triangular, and arranged for cutting. They are not tiny needles meant only for gripping. They work more like little blades. When a piranha bites, the upper and lower teeth can meet in a way that helps remove a clean piece from flesh, fin, or other food. It is an efficient system, and efficiency in nature often looks alarming when viewed from the soft-bodied perspective of a human being who would prefer to keep all of their fingers in the same arrangement they had at breakfast. The jaw is part of the same story. Piranhas have a strong bite for their size. That phrase is important. For their size. They are not crocodiles. They are not sharks. They are not enormous animals crushing bones with a head the size of a suitcase. But within the scale of small to medium freshwater fish, their jaws are impressive. A compact body, a strong jaw, and cutting teeth make a useful feeding tool. A piranha can take advantage of food sources that require slicing rather than swallowing whole. It can nip fins. It can tear pieces from carrion. It can bite into soft tissue. It can handle a range of foods that would be awkward for a fish with a less specialised mouth. And yet, those teeth do not define everything it eats. This may be the most surprising thing for anyone raised on the horror version. Many piranhas are not pure meat-seeking machines. Depending on the species and conditions, diets can include fish, fins, scales, insects, snails, crustaceans, worms, carrion, fruit, seeds, and plant material. The red-bellied piranha itself is often described as omnivorous. That means the famous toothy fish may spend part of its life eating things that are not dramatic at all. A fallen fruit does not scream, a seed does not flee. A snail, while probably not thrilled, is not exactly the stuff of cinema. Nature is full of these little corrections. The animal that looks like a villain may sometimes be eating lunch like a damp vegetarian with options. This does not make piranhas peaceful in the way people sometimes want animals to be peaceful. nature is not especially interested in our categories. We tend to ask, is it dangerous or harmless? But animals are usually neither in any simple way. A piranha can be cautious and capable of biting. It can eat plant material and tear flesh. It can flee from predators and frighten smaller animals. It can be a scavenger, a predator, a forager, and prey, depending on the hour. The river does not hand out one job title per creature. It asks everyone to improvise within the limits of their body. The body of a piranha is built for that practical improvising. Its eyes are positioned to watch the world around it, especially in water where visibility may be poor. Its lateral line, a sensory system found in fish, helps detect vibrations and pressure changes in the water. This is a very useful thing when you live in a place where sight is not always reliable. Murky water can hide both food and danger. A struggling animal sends out tiny waves of movement. Another fish turning sharply nearby creates a signal. A splash at the surface may mean food, danger, or both, which is nature's way of making every notification slightly stressful. Smell is also important. Water carries chemical information, and piranhas can respond to cues from blood, tissue, or other food sources. But this is not magic. It is not a supernatural blood radar that turns the entire river into a dinner bell. Smell spreads through water unevenly, shaped by current, distance, turbulence, and dilution. A scent cue may draw fish closer, but it works alongside other information. Movement matters. The behavior of nearby fish matters. Hunger matters. Past experience may matter. The piranha is not a simple machine with one button labelled attack. It is an animal sorting through signals just as many animals do, except its decision-making equipment comes with teeth that make people nervous. One of the most misunderstood parts of piranha life is the group. People see many piranhas together and assume they have gathered to hunt in a coordinated pack. That idea feels natural because we are used to thinking of group predators like wolves or lions, animals that can cooperate in ways we recognise. But piranha schooling is often more about safety than teamwork. Being in a group can reduce the chance that any one individual is singled out by a larger predator. It can also help with finding food, because if one fish notices something, others may respond. But that is not the same as an organised hunting party with strategy, leadership, and perhaps a small underwater clipboard. A school of fish can look unified because the individuals respond quickly to each other. One turns, others turn, one darts, others follow. This can create the appearance of a single body made from many bodies. But inside that moving group are individuals reacting moment by moment. Each one is trying to stay in a good position, avoid danger, and take opportunities. In a feeding event, this same group behaviour can become visually intense. Fish rush toward food. They avoid each other. They bite and retreat. They return. The scene may look coordinated from above, but it can be built from many simple decisions made very quickly. There is something almost familiar about that. Watch people move toward an open ticket gate, a tray of fresh pastries, or the only working coffee machine at a conference, and you may see complex crowd behaviour without anyone needing to plan it. Each person follows simple rules. Move toward the goal, avoid collisions, watch what others are doing. Do not get trapped behind the person who has suddenly forgotten how a wallet works. From above, the crowd may look like a flowing system. Up close, it is individuals making tiny choices. A feeding group of piranhas is not the same as a crowd of sleepy commuters, of course, but the comparison helps take some of the mystery out of the movement. Another thing to know about the fish behind the teeth is that piranhas are not all the same. The word piranha is often used as though it names one creature with one behaviour, but there are many species, and they do not all live exactly alike. Some are more carnivorous. Some are more inclined towards scavenging. Some feed more heavily on plant material. Some close relatives, such as pacus, are famous for strong teeth used in very different ways, including crushing seeds and fruits. The family tree around piranhas is more varied than the legend suggests. But legends, as we have already learned, are not fond of nuance. They prefer one fish, one mouth, one bad attitude. Even the red-bellied piranha, the celebrity of the group, changes with age and setting. Young individuals may feed differently from larger adults. Smaller fish may be more vulnerable and more reliant on cover. Bigger fish may forage at different times of day. Hunger, size, season, and local habitat all shape behaviour. A fish hiding among vegetation and waiting for prey is doing something different from a fish scavenging from a carcass or taking plant material. We should be careful not to imagine one endless feeding frenzy stretched across the whole life of the animal. Most of life is not a frenzy. Most of life is maintenance. Maintenance, in this case, can mean staying near cover. It can mean watching for predators. It can mean keeping position with the group. It can mean conserving energy. Fish do not have unlimited fuel. Chasing every possible meal would be wasteful and dangerous. A piranha has to decide whether the energy gained is worth the energy spent and the risk taken. That may sound too thoughtful, as if the fish is sitting under a root making a spreadsheet, but animals do not need conscious accounting to behave in energy-smart ways. Natural selection has a way of favouring bodies and instincts that do not spend all afternoon doing pointless nonsense. Though, to be fair, humans have found a loophole there. The fish's caution is important. In popular stories, piranhas are often fearless. In reality, many piranhas can be skittish. Sudden movement, large animals, shadows, and disturbance may send them away rather than toward danger. Aquarium keepers sometimes observe that piranhas can be nervous, hiding or startling easily. That surprises people who expect a tiny villain to attack the glass at all times. But again, from the fish's point of view, caution makes sense. Being armed does not make you invincible. A small animal in a river full of larger animals survives by paying attention. A piranha that investigates everything without fear may have a short career. This gives us a better way to understand the feeding frenzy. The frenzy is not the normal personality of the fish. It is what can happen when caution is outweighed by opportunity, competition, and strong feeding signals. If a food source is obvious enough, if other fish are already feeding, if hunger is high, if the risk seems acceptable, the balance shifts. The same animal that might flee from a shadow can rush toward a wounded fish. This is not contradiction, it is context. And context is the quiet engine under almost every animal behaviour that humans misunderstand. The mouth also tells us something about feeding style. Piranhas can remove pieces rather than needing to swallow prey whole. This opens up a range of feeding possibilities. A fish can nip at fins or scales. It can take from a carcass too large to swallow. It can feed alongside others because the food source can be divided into bites. This is one reason a group feeding event can progress quickly. Each fish does not need to claim the entire meal. It can take a piece, retreat, and return. The action looks like chaos, but the method is simple. Bite-sized opportunity, repeated many times. Fins and scales may sound like a strange diet, but in fish ecology, fin nipping and scale feeding are real strategies. A fin can regrow. A scale can be replaced. For the animal doing the feeding, this may provide nutrition without requiring it to kill the prey outright. For the fish being nipped, it is unpleasant, costly, and potentially dangerous, but not always immediately fatal. This is another place where the piranha's feeding habits become more complicated than the dramatic version. Predation is not always a clean story of one animal chasing, catching, and swallowing another. Sometimes it is taking pieces, sometimes it is scavenging, sometimes it is feeding on the leftovers of a larger event. Rivers are full of partial meals. The belly colour of the red-bellied piranha also deserves a small mention, not because it explains the feeding frenzy, but because it reminds us that the animal is not just a mouth. Adult red-bellied piranhas can have a reddish or orange underside, while younger fish may look more silvery with darker markings. Colour can change with maturity, condition, and environment. It is easy to focus only on the face, but the whole body belongs to an animal moving through a visual and social world. Colour, shape, size, and movement all have roles, even when we do not fully understand every detail from a human distance. Reproduction adds another layer to the real fish. During breeding periods, behaviour can change. Some fish become more territorial or defensive around nesting areas. Bites associated with piranhas in certain places may relate not only to feeding but to defensive behaviour, especially when humans or animals enter shallow areas where fish are guarding eggs or young. This matters because a bite is not always a feeding attempt. Humans often interpret any animal bite as an attempt to eat us, which is flattering in a terrible way, but not always correct. Sometimes an animal bites because it is startled, sometimes because it is defending space, sometimes because it is testing an object, sometimes because it has mistaken something for food. The mouth is a tool with more than one use. In the piranha's world, sound may play a role too. Studies have described sounds made by red-bellied piranhas during certain behaviours, including aggressive interactions. To us, fish can seem silent because we live in air and rarely listen properly underwater. But aquatic environments are full of sound. Movement, feeding, scraping, drumming, snapping, and other signals can travel in ways we do not notice from the bank. A piranha is not just watching and smelling. It is living in a sensory world that is much richer than our casual glance at the surface suggests. That is one of the great difficulties in understanding any fish. We are air animals trying to imagine water life. We think in terms of open views and clear sounds. Fish live with pressure, current, chemical trails, vibration, changing light, and obstacles that may appear suddenly from the murk. Their world is not less detailed than ours. It is detailed differently. So when we describe a feeding frenzy as if it begins with one obvious trigger, we may be simplifying a web of signals that the fish experiences more completely than we ever could from above. The real fish behind the teeth is also a product of its relatives. Piranhas belong to a broader group that includes pacus and other serrasalmid fishes. Some relatives have crushing teeth and plant-heavy diets. Others are more associated with flesh or fin feeding. This family connection is a useful reminder that evolution modifies existing tools. A jaw suited for one kind of feeding can be reshaped over time for another. Teeth can become sharper, flatter, stronger, more suited for slicing or crushing. The piranha's mouth is not a horror prop. It is part of a continuum of feeding adaptations in South American freshwater fish, and once we see it that way, the piranha becomes less like an exception and more like an example. Many animals are built around the problem of food. A hummingbird has a beak and tongue suited for nectar. A woodpecker has a skull and bill shaped by drilling. A cow has teeth and a stomach shaped by grass. A piranha has jaws and teeth shaped for cutting, scavenging, biting, and feeding opportunistically. The form is dramatic because the function is dramatic, but it is still function. It is still biology doing what biology does, matching body parts to survival problems with no concern at all for whether humans find the result tasteful. There is also no need to pretend the fish is smarter than it is. Piranhas are not plotting. They are not cruel. They are not angry at swimmers, livestock, or the concept of ankles. They are responding. That may sound like a small distinction, but it is central. Cruelty requires intention. Predation does not. A piranha biting a fish is not behaving badly. It is feeding. A piranha scavenging a carcass is not being gruesome. It is recycling nutrients through the food web, though admittedly in a way unlikely to appear on a greeting card. The river is not a moral courtroom. It is a system of exchanges. When an animal dies in or near the water, its body becomes food for many organisms. Fish, insects, microbes, turtles, birds, and other scavengers may all take part. Piranhas are one part of that process. Their ability to cut pieces quickly can make them highly visible participants, but they are not separate from the system. Scavenging is important. It returns energy and nutrients to living bodies. It removes dead material. It supports food webs. Humans often find scavenging unpleasant because we associate it with decay, but nature relies on it. Without scavengers, the world would be rather messier and not in a charming way. So, when we meet the fish behind the teeth, we meet a creature with several identities at once. It is a predator when the opportunity suits. It is a scavenger when carrion appears. It is a forager when plant material or small invertebrates are available. It is prey when larger animals hunt. It is a group member when schooling improves its odds. It is cautious when danger outweighs reward. It is bold when hunger, competition, and signals push it toward food. It is not one mood. It is not one myth. It is a living adjustment to a changing river. And this brings us closer to the moment we're trying to understand. A feeding frenzy does not start with the idea of piranhas. It starts with piranhas as they are. Fish with cutting teeth, strong jaws, quick senses, group behaviour, flexible diets, and a river full of information moving around them. The frenzy is built from these ordinary parts. It is not separate from their daily life. It is daily life intensified by the right conditions. Picture them again, not as a cloud of monsters, but as individual fish holding in the water. Some near cover, some angled toward the current. Their bodies make small corrections. Their senses are open to vibration, scent, motion, and the behaviour of others nearby. Most of the time, nothing dramatic happens. A bit of food passes and is ignored. A shadow moves overhead and the school shifts. A smaller fish darts too quickly to catch. A leaf falls, a fruit sinks. The water carries thousands of signals, and most of them do not become a frenzy. Then a different signal arrives, a stronger scent, a struggle, a pulse of movement that does not match the background motion of the river. One piranha turns, another notices that turn. A few bodies change direction. The group tightens, not because a plan has been announced, but because attention has gathered. The fish behind the teeth is now doing what it evolved to do. It is reading the river, and somewhere in that moving water, the first clear hint of food begins to spread. That first hint does not arrive with a trumpet blast, of course. Rivers are not so theatrical, at least not most of the time. It arrives as change in the water, a trace, a thin chemical message loosening itself from a wounded fish, a torn scale, a piece of flesh, or a dead animal caught against a root. To us standing above the surface, the water may look almost exactly the same. Brown, green, dark, bright, slow or quick, depending on the place and the light. But to an animal living inside it, the water is not empty space. It is full of information. Every current carries clues. Every disturbance leaves a trail. Every living thing leaks some small part of itself into the world around it. And blood, because humans are humans, has become the most famous of those clues. The phrase, blood in the water, hardly needs explanation. It sounds dangerous at once. It suggests that something hidden has noticed, something hungry has turned, and the situation has become, let us say, less ideal than it was a moment ago. It is one of those phrases that makes the imagination sit up straighter. We hear it and immediately picture a dark shape changing direction below us, which is unfair to many dark shapes, but very normal for the human mind. We are soft animals, after all. We have a long history of being concerned when something with teeth detects that we are leaking. But in the real river, blood is not a magic spell. It does not spread through miles of water as a perfect dinner invitation. It does not instantly summon every piranha from the surrounding region, like a tiny toothy emergency broadcast. Blood is a signal, and signals depend on conditions. How much is there? Where is the current moving? Is the water still or fast? Is the source fresh? Are there other smells already present? Are fish nearby? Are they hungry? Are they already alert? A scent cue can be powerful, but it has to move through the messy physical world, and the physical world is not always tidy about delivering messages. Think of smell in air. If someone bakes bread in the next room, you may notice it quickly. If the windows are open, and the wind is blowing the other way, you may not notice it at all. If you're standing beside a bonfire, a flower shop, and someone eating chips with vinegar, the bread may get lost in the crowd. Water works in its own way, but the idea is similar. Chemical traces spread, mix, dilute, drift, and break apart. A piranha does not smell blood as one clear arrow pointing straight to dinner. It detects molecules in the water, compares them with other cues, and moves through a changing trail that may be strong in one place and faint in another. This is where the myth often becomes too simple. People imagine a single drop falling from a finger and the whole river turning against them. A drop of blood can spread, yes. Fish can detect chemical cues at very low concentrations, yes. But detection is not the same as attack. A piranha may investigate, it may turn toward the source, it may become more alert, or it may do very little if the signal is weak, far away, mixed with other cues, or not supported by movement that suggests an easy meal. The scent is part of the story. It is not the whole story, which is disappointing for dramatic music but useful for accuracy. To a piranha, the smell of blood is not meaningful because blood is spooky. It is meaningful because blood often indicates damage. Damage may mean a wounded fish, an injured animal, exposed tissue, or carrion. In a river, food does not always announce itself politely. A healthy fish may be fast, evasive, and difficult to catch. A wounded one is different. Its movements may become uneven. It may struggle near the surface. It may hide badly. It may release blood, mucus, tissue fluids, and other chemicals into the water. These are not just smells, they are evidence. They say that somewhere nearby, an animal has become easier to eat than it was before. That matters because predators and scavengers do not want to waste effort. Even a small fish with sharp teeth must spend energy carefully. Chasing healthy prey can be costly. Failing too often can mean losing more energy than the meal would provide. Scavenging from a carcass or biting a wounded animal may be more efficient. The scent of blood can help piranhas locate those opportunities, especially in murky water where sight is limited. It is less like a monster smelling weakness from across a kingdom, and more like a practical fish noticing that lunch may have become slightly less athletic. The actual equipment for detecting these cues is impressive. Fish have olfactory organs, specialised structures used for smell, though not smell in the airy nose-in-the-breeze way we experience it. Water passes over sensory tissue and dissolved chemicals interact with receptors. Different molecules can suggest different things: food, other fish, alarm cues, reproductive signals, habitat conditions. A river fish lives inside a chemical landscape. To us, a patch of water may seem blank. To a fish, it may carry a record of who passed through, what they were doing, and whether anything nearby is edible, dangerous, or worth ignoring. It is rather like walking into a room and reading the guest list through the wallpaper. Blood is only one part of that chemical landscape. Injured fish may release substances from damaged skin. Some fish also release alarm cues when hurt, warning nearby members of the same or related species that danger is present. These cues can cause other fish to hide, scatter, freeze, or become alert. So the same injury that may attract a predator can frighten potential prey. The water becomes a confusing notice board. To one animal, it says food. To another, it says leave immediately, and maybe do not stop to ask who bit whom. The river is full of these overlapping messages, and every animal reads them according to its own needs. Piranhas, being both predators and prey, have reason to pay attention to more than food cues. A strong smell of injury could mean a meal, but it could also mean danger. Something injured that animal. Something larger may still be close. A feeding event may attract competitors. The commotion itself may draw predators that can eat piranhas. So the scent of blood does not simply erase caution. It competes with caution. This balance is important. A hungry fish may investigate quickly. A well-fed or nervous fish may keep more distance. A group may approach more boldly than a lone individual. A crowded, food-limited situation may reduce hesitation. The same cue can produce different behaviour depending on the animal's state and the setting. That is one of the reasons feeding events can seem unpredictable to humans. We like simple rules. Blood equals attack, splashing equals danger, piranhas equal frenzy. But rivers work in probabilities and conditions, not slogans. A small wound in one place may attract little attention. A larger injured fish struggling in shallow water during a dry season crowding event may attract a lot. A carcass held in place where scent can gather may bring fish in more steadily than a piece of tissue swept away in fast current. A signal that would be diluted in a wide channel might be much stronger in a confined pool. The water is not just a background, it shapes the message. Current is especially important. Chemical cues do not spread evenly in all directions like a neat circle drawn on a map. They form plumes, streaks, patches, and trails. A fish moving upstream may encounter a scent, lose it, find it again, and adjust its path. If the current shifts, the trail shifts. If the water is turbulent, the cue breaks into uneven pulses. This can make searching difficult but also useful. A piranha may not need a constant smell. Intermittent cues can still guide movement, especially when combined with other signs. If the scent grows stronger in one direction, the animal may follow it. If nearby fish are also turning that way, the signal becomes more convincing. This is where the group begins to matter again. One piranha detecting a scent may change direction. Another piranha may notice that movement, even if it has not detected the same cue as strongly. Fish are extremely responsive to the motion of nearby fish. In schooling animals, the behaviour of one individual can ripple through the group. A turn becomes several turns. A quick movement becomes a general shift. The group does not need a leader. It needs local reactions. Each fish responds to the fish beside it, and the result can look as if everyone received the same instruction at once, which, in a sense, they did, though the instruction was written in movement rather than words. Now add vibration. A wounded fish does not only leak chemicals, it moves differently. A healthy fish may dart with clean, controlled bursts. An injured fish may flutter, twitch, roll, strike the surface, scrape against vegetation, or struggle in short, uneven pulses. These movements travel through water as pressure waves. Fish can detect them with the lateral line, the sensory system running along the sides of the body. This system helps fish sense nearby motion and changes in water pressure. It is one reason fish can move in schools without constantly bumping into each other, and one reason predators can detect struggling prey even when visibility is poor. So, when people say piranhas smell blood, they are naming only the most famous part of a larger sensory picture. A piranha may detect blood or tissue fluids. It may sense frantic movement. It may see flashes of pale flesh or scales. It may hear or feel splashing. It may notice other piranhas turning. It may already be hungry. It may be in a crowded space where hesitation means losing out. These layers build on each other. The scent opens the possibility. Movement confirms vulnerability. The group amplifies attention. The first bite changes the water again, adding more scent, more motion, more urgency. There is a small but important difference between attraction and escalation. A scent can attract piranhas to investigate. Escalation happens when the situation keeps feeding more information back into itself. One bite releases more tissue. More tissue strengthens the chemical cue. The injured or dying animal struggles more, sending stronger vibrations. More fish arrive and their movement increases the visible disturbance. Competition rises. Bites become more likely because bites are already happening. This is why a feeding event can seem to bloom suddenly. For a while, the ingredients gather quietly. Then the feedback loop takes hold, and the river surface appears to change character. Humans watching from outside often miss the quiet build-up. We notice the splash, not the scent plume. We notice the churning water, not the first fish that turned a few seconds earlier. We notice the dramatic middle, not the hidden beginning. That is understandable. Our senses are built for air and light. We do not stand on a riverbank and smell what a fish smells 10 centimetres below the surface. We do not feel the tiny pressure changes from an injured fish moving behind a root. We receive the story late, after the piranhas have already been reading it for some time. This late arrival is part of why the event feels so sudden. To us, nothing is happening. Then everything is happening. To the fish, the shift may be more gradual. The water begins to change. A cue appears. It strengthens. A movement pattern stands out. Others respond. The distance closes. The first bite lands. The event accelerates. From the bank, it looks like a switch was flipped. Beneath the surface, it may be more like a set of small decisions collecting until they become visible. The scent of blood also interacts with hunger. Hunger changes. Risk. A well-fed animal can afford to be careful. A hungry one may approach sooner, bite faster, or tolerate more competition. During times when food is scarce, animals may respond strongly to cues they might otherwise ignore. This is not unique to piranhas. It is basic survival. The same household cat that looks at its dinner with royal disappointment at 6 p.m. may become deeply interested in a dropped crumb at 11 if circumstances have become dramatic enough. Scale that idea into a river, replace the cat with fish, and remove the sense of personal judgment, and the principle is not so different. Seasonal water levels can shape this. In flood periods, food may be spread through expanded habitat. Fish can disperse into flooded forests, where there may be fruits, seeds, insects, and many smaller animals. In dry periods, shrinking water can concentrate fish in pools and channels. Competition can increase. Oxygen levels, temperature, and available prey can change. A scent cue in a crowded pool full of hungry fish may have a stronger effect than the same cue in a broad, food-rich flooded area. The piranha's response is not just about the blood. It is about the blood arriving in a particular ecological mood. The source of the blood matters too. A large healthy animal briefly bleeding in deep water is not the same as a dying fish trapped in shallow water. Piranhas are not built to casually overpower every large animal that enters their habitat. They are much more likely to exploit vulnerability. A dead animal, a wounded fish, an injured bird, scraps from human activity, or pieces of meat can all create feeding opportunities. The scent says something is available, but the fish still has to decide whether it can safely take advantage. A cow wading strongly through water is one kind of situation. A carcass stuck against a submerged branch is another. The legend tends to treat them as the same because the legend is not known for field notes. There is also the question of distance. People often imagine piranhas detecting blood from very far away, as though the river is a telephone line and blood is calling every fish by name. In reality, distance matters. Chemical signals dilute. Currents carry them in particular directions. Obstacles block and redirect flow. Fish close to the plume may react. Fish outside it may know nothing is happening. A frenzy is usually local. It is not the entire river making a decision. It is a set of animals in range of the right cues, under the right conditions, responding quickly to a food opportunity. And there is something almost reassuring in that, though perhaps only mildly reassuring if one is already standing in the water. The danger is not mystical. It has edges. It depends on proximity, context, and behaviour. That does not mean caution is unnecessary. It means caution can be intelligent rather than panicked. Avoid entering water where fish are being cleaned and scraps are thrown in. Avoid splashing with open wounds in places known for piranha activity. Be careful during low water periods and in areas where fish may be concentrated. Do not treat nesting or feeding sites as playgrounds. These are practical rules, not horror rules. The river does not need us to be terrified. It needs us to pay attention. Still, the phrase blood in the water keeps its power because it connects to something very old in us. Blood means injury. Injury means vulnerability. Vulnerability near hidden animals means danger. Our minds compress all of that into one reaction, and honestly, that reaction has probably been useful many times. It is better to be a little too cautious around unknown water than to behave like someone auditioning for a cautionary tale. But science lets us take the reaction apart. It lets us see that piranhas are not responding to blood because blood is dramatic to us. They are responding because dissolved chemicals and movement help identify food in a difficult environment. The water itself makes this necessary. In clear, open water, a predator might rely more on sight. In the complex habitats where piranhas live, sight may be limited by suspended particles, tannins, shadows, vegetation, depth, and low light. Chemical and mechanical cues become very useful. A fish that can detect injury without seeing it has an advantage. A fish that can follow other fish toward an opportunity has an advantage. A fish that can bite quickly once it reaches the source has an advantage. Put those advantages together, and you begin to see why the piranha is built the way it is. There is another layer here that is easy to miss. Scent does not simply guide the first piranhas to food. It can change the behaviour of the group once feeding starts. Fresh tissue and blood entering the water may maintain interest. As pieces are torn away, the chemical signal may become stronger for a time. This can keep nearby fish engaged and draw in others. But if the food source is consumed, carried away, or no longer releasing strong cues, the signal weakens. The event fades. This rise and fall is one reason feeding frenzies are often bursts rather than long ceremonies. The fuel for the behaviour is not endless. It is tied to the food, the cues, and the fish present. The idea of a feedback loop may sound a little technical, but it is simple enough. One thing increases another thing, which then increases the first thing again. A wounded animal releases blood. The blood attracts fish. The fish bite. The bites release more blood and tissue. More fish react. More bites happen. The water becomes more active. But feedback loops do not run forever. They stop when the source is gone. The fish are full, the risk rises, or the signals weaken. The frenzy is a process with a beginning, a peak, and a decline. It is not a permanent state of the fish. Imagine a quiet kitchen where someone opens a packet of biscuits. One person hears it and looks over. Another notices the first person looking. The packet rustles again. Suddenly everyone seems interested. For a few seconds there is movement, reaching, mild accusations, and the mysterious disappearance of the best ones. Then the plate is empty, and everyone returns to pretending they were not that invested. This is not an exact model of piranha feeding, but it captures the social amplification. One cue becomes several cues. Individual interest becomes group movement. The event feels larger because attention spreads. In the river, the first piranha to approach may not even be the boldest in any permanent sense. It may simply be closest to the strongest part of the scent plume, or it may detect the movement first, or it may be hungrier, or it may be positioned downstream where chemical cues arrive more clearly. Once it turns, others can copy or follow. The first bite may come from one fish, but after that the distinction between leader and follower becomes less useful. The food source itself starts directing the event. The injured animal, the current, the scent, and the group all shape what happens next. This is why feeding frenzies can look so immediate when bait or meat is placed in water containing many hungry piranhas. The food is concentrated, the cue is strong, the fish are close. The setting may be confined. One bite produces more cues. The response builds quickly. In the wild, the same principles apply, but the conditions are less controlled. Food may drift, hide, sink, be defended, or be contested by other animals. Piranhas may be scattered, cautious, full, or distracted. A frenzy is possible, not guaranteed. The scent of blood opens a door, but the river decides how wide it swings. And all of this begins before the famous teeth do their work. That may be the most useful correction of all. The feeding frenzy is not mainly about teeth at first, it is about detection. The teeth are the tool used once the fish arrive. The real beginning is sensory, chemical trails, water movement, group reactions, hunger, distance, current, season, risk. A piranha feeding event is born in information before it becomes visible action. The river speaks first, and the fish listen. So picture that earlier scene again, but more closely now. A wounded fish trembles near the roots, hidden from the bank by shadow and brown water. A faint thread of blood and tissue slips into the current. It does not spread everywhere. It curls downstream, thins, gathers in small streaks, breaks around stems and drifts through a space where several piranhas are holding. One fish turns its head slightly, another pauses, a third shifts position after noticing the movement. The struggling fish flicks its body again, sending pressure waves into the water. The scent strengthens for a moment. Attention gathers. No frenzy yet. Not quite. Just a change in direction. Just bodies aligning toward the same small point in the river. Just the first stage of an event that, from above, may soon look sudden, violent, and simple, but from below is already layered with signals. The scent has done its work. The water has delivered the message. Now the fish are close enough for the next part to begin. Now the fish are close enough for the next part to begin, and this is where the famous image finally starts to take shape. Not all at once, not as a single explosion of teeth, but as a sequence of small decisions that become too fast and too crowded for the human eye to separate. A piranha feeding frenzy does not usually begin with every fish charging in at the same moment. It begins with investigation, a turn, a pause, a closer pass. One fish approaches the source of the scent or movement, then pulls away, then returns. Another comes in from a slightly different angle. The water is still mostly calm, but the pattern has changed. The fish are no longer simply holding position in the current. They're orienting toward the same thing. This is the quiet beginning that the dramatic stories often leave out. Before the water seems to boil, there is hesitation. Piranhas are not foolish. They may have sharp teeth, but they are still small enough to be eaten by larger animals, and that fact has a strong influence on behaviour. An injured fish could be food, but it could also be bait in the broad natural sense. A carcass might draw not only piranhas, but larger predators. A struggling animal may still have enough strength to strike, thrash, or escape. Even food can be risky if the area around it is exposed. So the first approach is often cautious. The fish may dart in, inspect, and veer away. It may test the edge of the situation before committing. If piranhas had tiny clipboards, this would be the risk assessment phase, though fortunately for everyone, evolution chose teeth instead of paperwork. A feeding frenzy actually starts when investigation becomes feeding, and feeding becomes contagious. That word, contagious, is useful here, but not in the sense of disease. It means that the behaviour of one fish can increase the likelihood that another fish does the same thing. One piranha bites or attempts to bite. The food source reacts or more tissue enters the water. Nearby fish see or feel the motion. They detect stronger chemical cues. They notice another fish making contact. Their own hesitation decreases. A second fish bites, then a third. The event begins to build not because a command has been given, but because each action changes the conditions for the next action. This is a very common pattern in animal groups. One individual does something that provides information to others. A bird takes flight and the flock follows. A grazing animal bolts, and the herd moves before every individual has checked for danger. A fish turns sharply, and the school ripples around it. In group living animals, paying attention to neighbours can save time. Waiting to personally verify every clue is sometimes a luxury. If every fish had to stop and think, now, is that truly food, or merely an intriguing bit of river nonsense? The meal might be gone before the question was finished. So group behaviour often relies on quick local responses. Watch those near you. Copy what seems useful. Adjust if the situation changes. In piranhas, this can make feeding events accelerate quickly. The first bite is important because it changes the object from possible food into active food. Before the bite, the source may be only a scent and movement. After the bite, there may be fresh tissue, stronger smell, more struggling, and proof that the object can be fed on. That proof matters. Animals often use the behaviour of others as information. If one fish bites and is not immediately punished by injury, predation, or failure, nearby fish may become bolder. The situation becomes less uncertain, still dangerous perhaps, still competitive, but now clearly worth attention. And once more fish join, the pressure rises. This is where competition starts to shape the scene. A single piranha approaching a food source may be careful, even delicate in its own sharp little way. Several piranhas approaching the same food source have a different problem. Each fish must get access before others take the best pieces. If it waits too long, it loses out. If it rushes too carelessly, it may collide, be bitten, or expose itself. So the movement becomes fast and repetitive. In, bite, away. In again, bite again, away again. The fish do not need to remain clamped onto the food. In fact, moving away after a bite can reduce the chance of injury from the struggling animal or from other piranhas. From above, this looks like chaos. Under the surface, it is a rough pattern. Approach from an angle, take a piece, turn away, circle back, avoid the mouths of others, re-enter when there is a gap. The water flashes because bodies are turning. The surface breaks because the food source may be near the top, or because the fish are moving so quickly that they disturb the water. Bubbles, splashes and ripples make the whole thing look larger than it is. The sound and motion tell the human mind that something wild is happening, and the human mind, never one to miss a dramatic opportunity, fills in the rest. The size of the food source changes how the frenzy begins. If the food is small, perhaps a wounded fish, the event may be brief and very localized. A few piranhas close in, bite, tear, and the prey is quickly reduced or carried away. If the food source is larger, such as a carcass or a substantial piece of meat, the feeding may involve more individuals and last longer. The larger source continues releasing cues as bites are taken. It offers more surface area. Fish can approach from different directions. The competition can continue because there is enough food for multiple bites. This is why demonstrations involving meat in water can look so dramatic. The food is obvious, rich, and stationary enough for many fish to gather. Nature rarely sets the table so neatly, but when it does, the fish do not send regrets. Location matters just as much. In open water, a food source may drift, sink, or disperse, making it harder for a dense group to form. In shallow water, against roots, in a backwater pool, or near the edge of a river, food may be held in place. That gives fish more time to gather. Current can carry scent downstream, bringing in individuals from a particular direction. Vegetation can make escape harder for wounded prey. Low water can concentrate fish and reduce the space between them. Put those conditions together, and the start of a frenzy becomes more likely. Not guaranteed, but more likely. The river does not produce the same behaviour everywhere. It has moods made from depth, flow, season, temperature, oxygen, hunger, and crowding. Crowding is especially important. Piranhas are often associated with shoals, and when many fish are close together, information spreads quickly. One fish's movement becomes visible to several others. The scent of feeding reaches many noses at once. Competition is immediate because neighbours are already nearby. In a sparse setting, one fish may feed without triggering a large event. In a dense group, the same first bite can become a signal that spreads through bodies like a spark moving through dry grass. Though perhaps that comparison is unfair to grass, which usually has fewer teeth. Hunger lowers the threshold for action. A well-fed piranha may investigate and decide not to risk it. A hungry piranha may bite sooner. A very hungry group in a confined area may respond with speed that looks shocking. This is where many exaggerated stories find a small root of truth. Under unusual conditions, especially when fish are deprived of food or crowded into limited water, their response can become intense. But that intensity belongs to the conditions as much as to the species. Hungry animals behave like hungry animals. The teeth make the result look more dramatic, but the underlying pressure is hunger and opportunity. The first physical contact may be a nip rather than a full committed attack. A piranha may bite at a fin, an edge of flesh, or a softer exposed area. The bite tests the food and may create a new wound. If the target is alive, this can cause more struggling, which increases vibration. The struggling in turn draws more attention. This is one of the cruel efficiencies of predation. The prey's attempt to escape can sometimes make it more detectable. A wounded fish thrashing in the water is not only trying to live, it is also broadcasting its vulnerability. Nature, as always, has not filed this under fair. But feeding frenzies do not always begin with live prey. Carrion can produce a similar gathering without the same initial struggle. A dead animal in the water releases chemical cues as tissue breaks down or is opened by scavengers. Piranhas may arrive gradually and the first bites may expose fresher tissue. As feeding continues, the smell strengthens and others join. The lack of struggling may make the scene less explosive at first, but competition can still create rapid movement. If the carcass is large enough and fish density is high enough, the event can become visually similar to a live prey feeding frenzy, though the biological situation is different. To a watching human, the surface does not provide footnotes. Scraps from human activity can also start feeding events. Fish cleaning stations, discarded bait, slaughter waste or food thrown from boats can condition fish to associate certain places with easy meals. This is important because animal behaviour is often shaped by repeated opportunity. If food regularly appears near a dock or riverbank, fish may gather there more readily. This does not mean they have become unnatural monsters. It means they have learned, or at least responded repeatedly, to a reliable food source. Humans have a remarkable talent for creating animal behaviour and then being surprised by it. The start of a frenzy can also be affected by time of day. Light levels change visibility. Some fish may be more active during certain periods. Shadows near dusk or dawn can make both predators and prey behave differently. Warmer water can influence metabolism. Oxygen levels can affect activity. None of these factors alone may determine whether feeding begins, but they add to the background conditions. A piranha is not only asking, in its fish-like way, whether food is present, it is living inside a body tuned by temperature, hunger, fear, and the surrounding group. The same food cue in different conditions may produce different results. There is another detail worth slowing down for because it changes the emotional picture. A piranha feeding frenzy is often imagined as an act of aggression, but feeding is not the same as aggression. Aggression usually involves conflict over territory, mates, hierarchy, or defense. Feeding is about obtaining energy. The movement may look aggressive to us because it is fast and involves biting, but the motivation is not anger. The fish are not furious at the food. They are not offended by a carcass. They are not taking revenge on a wounded fish for some old river disagreement. They are feeding under competitive conditions. It may be violent, but it is not personal. This matters because humans easily assign emotion to action. A bite feels hostile because if a person bit us, we would assume some social problem had developed. But animals bite for many reasons. A piranha's feeding bite is a mechanical act, guided by cues and shaped by survival. Removing human-style intention makes the scene less monstrous, though not less intense. It lets us describe what happens without turning the fish into tiny villains. They are not cruel, they are efficient, and efficiency, when combined with sharp teeth, can be deeply unsettling. The actual start of a frenzy may be almost invisible if you're not watching closely. A fish angles upward. Another shifts beside it. A small rush happens below the surface. A flash appears and disappears. Then comes the first clear splash. By the time a human notices, several decisions may already have happened. The water suddenly shows what the fish have been building toward. This is why observers may say the piranhas appeared from nowhere. They did not. They were nearby, hidden by water, vegetation, depth, or darkness. The event emerged into visibility, and once it becomes visible, our attention tends to lock onto the surface. Surface disturbance is dramatic, but much of the important action may happen below it. Fish may approach from beneath, from the sides, from the downstream scent trail, or from cover. Some may feed while others circle. Some may hesitate at the edge. Not every piranha present necessarily bites. In any group, individuals may differ in boldness, hunger, size, and position. The most dramatic individuals may define the event for the observer, while the cautious ones remain less noticeable. This is another way the reputation becomes inflated. We remember the boldest behaviour and assume it belongs equally to all. Size differences within the group can affect access. Larger piranhas may get better positions, push closer, or take larger bites. Smaller individuals may hang back or dart in at openings. Competition does not always mean direct fighting, though direct biting between piranhas can occur. Often it is about positioning. A fish that approaches from the wrong angle may be blocked or forced away. A fish that comes in at the right moment may get a quick piece. The feeding source becomes the centre of a moving pattern, with fish adjusting around it like sparks around a flame, though wetter and considerably less suitable for a candlelit dinner. The prey's condition is central. A healthy animal with room to escape may break away before a frenzy develops. A wounded or trapped animal may not. If prey is confined in shallow water, caught in vegetation, or weakened by injury, the chances of repeated bites increase. Each bite reduces its ability to escape. This is how a feeding event can escalate from investigation to overwhelming pressure. Not because piranhas always overpower large healthy animals, but because vulnerability compounds. Injury leads to more injury. Struggle leads to more detection. More fish lead to more bites. The start of the frenzy is the moment the balance shifts from possible escape to a feeding opportunity that many fish can exploit. The sound of the event can also contribute. Water splashing, bodies striking the surface, prey thrashing, and fish snapping or moving quickly all create vibrations. These vibrations may attract more attention nearby. A feeding group becomes its own signal. Even fish that did not detect the first blood cue may detect the disturbance created by feeding. In this way, the event broadcasts itself. The larger it gets, the easier it is for nearby fish to notice. Again, this is a feedback loop, but now not only chemical, it is physical. The water carries the news in movement. This is one of the reasons baited piranha feeding can look almost theatrical. When people place meat into water where piranhas are already present and hungry, they are supplying a strong cue, a concentrated source, and often a fixed point of feeding. The fish do not need to search widely. They only need to converge. The first bites strengthen the cue, and the group response becomes visible. But in natural conditions, the process may be more scattered. The food may move. The first fish may lose it. The prey may escape. A larger predator may interrupt. The scent may disperse. Many possible frenzies never become the dramatic version because the conditions fail to line up. That is worth remembering. For every visible feeding event, there may be countless moments when piranhas investigate and nothing much happens. A scent fades. A fish turns back. A potential prey animal escapes. A group starts to gather, but then scatters at the shadow of a bird or the movement of a larger fish. Nature includes many almost events. Humans rarely notice them because almost events make poor stories, but for animals, they are part of the daily rhythm. Try, assess, retreat, try again. The frenzy is not the default. It is the successful ignition of many factors at once. The phrase feeding frenzy also suggests that the fish lose control, but in many ways the start depends on control. Each piranha must control its movements enough to bite and avoid injury. It must navigate other bodies. It must time its approach. It must turn sharply in turbulent water. A completely uncontrolled animal would be ineffective. The frenzy appears uncontrolled from a distance because many controlled movements overlap. It's like watching a busy market from far above. The whole thing looks like confusion, but each person is reaching for a tomato, paying for bread, avoiding a bicycle, or wondering why they came in for one item and now have 8. The pattern is messy but not meaningless. As feeding continues, the first stage passes into a more intense middle. The number of bites increases. The food source may be reduced quickly. The water may cloud with disturbed sediment, scales, tissue, or bubbles. Visibility can worsen, making smell and vibration even more important. Fish may strike at exposed edges. They may pull away with pieces. The group may shift as the food source moves or breaks apart. If the prey is still alive, its movements may weaken, changing the cues again. The frenzy is not a single action. It is a changing sequence, and the start is only the moment when the sequence becomes self-reinforcing. There is a strange precision in that. A feeding frenzy starts when information becomes action, and action creates more information. Blood, tissue, movement, group response, competition, biting, strong cues, more movement, more biting. Not all at once, not magic, not mindless. A loop. A very sharp loop, certainly, but a loop all the same. Once we understand that, the event becomes less like a horror scene and more like a biological process. Still dramatic, still worth respecting, but understandable. Imagine the scene in slow motion. The wounded fish flickers near a tangle of submerged roots. A few piranhas hold downstream, their bodies angled into the current. The chemical trail reaches them in pieces. One fish moves first, then checks itself. Another follows the turn. A third catches the vibration from the struggling prey. The distance closes. The prey darts, but not cleanly. The first piranha comes in from the side and nips at exposed tissue. It pulls away. Fresh blood enters the water. The prey thrashes harder. Nearby fish react to both the scent and the movement. Another bite lands, then another. The space around the prey tightens. The water, which seemed empty a few seconds ago, is now full of flashing bodies. From above, someone might say it began suddenly. From below, it began step by step. A cue became interest. Interest became approach. Approach became contact. Contact became competition. Competition became speed. And speed became the thing we call frenzy. It is not a separate state dropped into the river from outside. It is ordinary feeding behavior accelerated by the presence of many fish and a food source that keeps releasing signals. And this brings us toward the next thing we need to look at carefully, the movement itself. Because once the feeding has started, the question becomes how so many sharp-mouthed fish manage to move in such close quarters without the whole event collapsing into random collisions. There is a structure hidden inside the rush. There are angles, gaps, turns, signals, and split-second adjustments. The bite matters, but so does the swarm around it. The water carries more than scent now. It carries pressure, motion, and the quick decisions of a group that has become, for a few moments, one churning pattern of hunger and response. The water carries more than scent now. It carries motion. And motion, in a school of fish, is never just motion. It is information. A single turn can be a warning. A sudden dart can be an invitation. A quick retreat can ripple through nearby bodies before any one fish has had time to carefully inspect the reason. In a feeding event, this matters enormously, because once the first piranhas begin moving in, the group does not behave like a pile of separate fish thrown randomly into the same patch of river. It behaves more like a living pattern, made from many individuals following simple rules very quickly. This is where the science of swarming begins to show itself, not in a grand plan, not in a leader with a tiny crown and a strong opinion about dinner, but in local reactions. Each fish pays attention to the fish nearest to it. It keeps a certain distance. It avoids collision. It turns when neighbours turn. It moves toward food when others appear to have found food. It pulls away when the movement becomes too crowded or dangerous. None of these rules need to be complicated, but when dozens of animals follow them at the same time, the result can look almost choreographed. A school bends, splits, tightens, scatters, reforms, and during a feeding frenzy this moving structure becomes faster, denser, and much more difficult for us to read from above. There is a useful lesson here, and it applies far beyond piranhas. Complex group behaviour does not always require complex individual thought. A flock of birds can turn across the sky in one sweeping motion without each bird receiving a formal memo. A school of fish can change direction almost as one body, because each fish is reacting to its neighbours. A crowd of people can begin moving toward an exit, because a few people at the front move first. This is sometimes called a cascade, where a small change spreads through a group and becomes much larger than the original action. In fish schools, researchers have described these kinds of behavioural cascades, where large shifts in direction can be triggered by the movements of a small number of individuals. The piranha feeding frenzy is not exactly the same as a peaceful school changing course, of course. There is food involved, and teeth, which always give the situation a slightly different mood. But the underlying idea helps us understand how a few fish responding to a food cue can become a much larger group. Response. Imagine the first piranha moving toward a struggling fish. It may be closest to the scent. It may be hungriest. It may simply be in the right position. Another piranha beside it does not need to know the whole story. It only needs to notice the change. That neighbour turns as well. A third sees both bodies shift. A fourth detects the scent plume more strongly as it enters the same patch of water. Within moments, several fish are aligned toward the same source. The group tightens not because anyone has ordered it to tighten, but because interest is becoming shared. The river has produced a signal, and the school has begun to amplify it. This amplification is one reason feeding frenzies look so sudden. A single fish investigating something underwater is easy to miss. 5 fish turning together are more visible. 20 fish rushing in and out of a tight space become impossible to ignore. The human eye notices the later stage, when the pattern has already grown. But the fish are building it from smaller steps. One reaction becomes several. Several become a rush becomes a visible disturbance. By the time the surface breaks, the swarm is already underway. The word swarm can sound a little dramatic, but it is useful if we handle it carefully. A swarm is not necessarily a mob. It is a group in collective motion. Insects swarm, birds flock, fish school, humans queue, though not always with the same elegance. These groups can move as if they are coordinated, yet much of the coordination comes from individuals responding to nearby individuals. During a piranha feeding event, the swarm is shaped by attraction and avoidance at the same time. The fish are attracted to the food source, but they must avoid crashing into each other, avoid the sharp mouths of neighbours, and avoid staying too long in a position where they might be injured. That last point is easy to overlook. We tend to focus on the danger piranhas pose to the food, but a feeding frenzy is dangerous for the piranhas too. Each fish is surrounded by other fish with the same cutting equipment. A careless movement could place a fin, flank or eye too close to another mouth. Competition can produce accidental bites. A struggling prey animal may thrash. Larger predators may be drawn to the commotion. So the swarm is not just a rush toward food, it is a rapid negotiation between hunger and safety. Get close enough to bite. Do not stay close enough to be bitten. Take a piece. Leave the crowded centre. Return if there is still an opening. It is a sharp little dance, though not one you would want performed in your bathtub. The biting itself is not chewing in the way we chew. Piranhas are built for cutting. Their triangular teeth interlock neatly, and their jaw structure allows a strong shearing action. That means a bite can remove a piece rather than simply hold or crush. In a feeding frenzy, this matters because pieces can be taken quickly by multiple individuals. One fish does not need to consume the entire prey. It can strike, slice, and move away. Another fish can enter from another angle. A third can take a different edge. The food source becomes divided by repeated bites, and repeated bites are exactly what the group is good at producing once the event begins. This is one reason the feeding can look so unnerving. Many predators aim to capture and subdue one prey item. Piranhas, in a group feeding situation, may feed by repeated piece-taking. The motion is not one long hold, it is a sequence of brief contacts: dart in, bite, turn away, swallow or reposition, dart back. Each bite is small compared with the whole food source, but many small bites add up quickly. The scene can seem almost mechanical, like a living pair of scissors being opened and closed by the current. Not poetic, perhaps, but very accurate in the way uncomfortable things sometimes are. The angle of attack matters. A piranha approaching a food source head-on may face the movement of the prey, the mouths of other fish, or the least accessible surface. Coming from the side can expose softer areas. Coming from below may reduce visibility to others, or allow a quick upward strike. Coming from behind may help if the target is a fish with damaged fins or a weakened tail. These decisions are not necessarily conscious strategies in the human sense, but the body and nervous system are shaped to take advantage of openings. Animals do not need to think in sentences to solve movement, problems. A fish does not say, "I shall now approach at a 40-degree angle for optimal tissue removal." It simply moves in ways that have worked for fish shaped like it. In a crowded feeding event, the best opening changes from moment to moment. One fish enters, and that opening closes. Another fish leaves, and a gap appears. The food shifts, the current pulls, the prey turns or weakens. The swarm rearranges itself constantly. This gives the surface its irregular churning appearance. It is not a smooth circle of fish politely taking turns, which would be impressive but unlikely. It is a fast, messy pattern of access and retreat. Each individual is trying to solve the same problem at the same time: how to get a bite without becoming part of someone else's bite. The lateral line helps with this. Fish can sense pressure changes and movement in the water, which is especially useful in close quarters. In a school, this sensory system helps individuals respond to neighbours and obstacles. In a feeding frenzy, it helps them detect the movement of prey, the rush of nearby fish, and the turbulence created by the group. Vision may be limited by murk, bubbles, disturbed sediment, or the bodies of other fish. Smell tells them food is there. The lateral line helps tell them what is moving and where. The eyes add flashes of shape and light. The whole animal becomes a set of fast-reading instruments, which is a fancy way of saying the fish is paying attention with its entire body. That body is compact for a reason. A piranha's deep, laterally compressed shape allows quick turns. It is not built like a spear thrown through open ocean. It is built for manoeuvring in a river full of cover, current, roots, and other fish. During feeding, quick turns are essential. A fish must approach, bite, and pivot away. The better it turns, the less time it spends exposed in the crowded centre. A long, slow-turning body would be less suited to this kind of repeated close feeding. The piranha's shape, jaw, teeth, senses, and group behaviour all come together in the frenzy. No single feature explains it. Teeth without movement would be useless. Movement without senses would be blind. Senses without hunger would not drive action. Hunger without a group would look very different. There is also timing. A bite must land at the right moment. If the fish strikes too early, it may miss or only scrape. If it strikes too late, another fish may take the opening. If the prey thrashes, the piranha must adjust. If a neighbour crosses its path, it may abort the strike. This stop-start rhythm is one reason the scene looks flickering rather than steady. The fish are not continuously attached to the food. They are making brief attempts, many of which may be partial, missed, or interrupted. The successful bites are the ones we notice in the outcome, but the event includes many near bites, turns, dodges, and corrections. The swarm also changes the prey's options. A wounded fish trying to escape one predator can turn away. Trying to escape many bodies approaching from different angles is harder. Every movement may expose another side. Every turn may bring it closer to a different mouth. If the prey is already weak or trapped, the pressure compounds. This does not mean piranhas easily overwhelm any large animal. That is the old myth sneaking back with wet shoes. It means that for vulnerable prey of the right size or condition, a group can reduce escape options quickly. The swarm is not only more mouths, it is more angles. Angles matter in water because escape is three-dimensional. A fish can move forward, upward, downward, sideways, into cover, or with the current. A single predator must match or predict that movement. A group creates a more difficult field. Some individuals may block paths simply by being present. Others may follow movement. Still, others may enter from behind after the prey turns. Again, this does not require conscious cooperation. The pattern can emerge from individuals all aiming for the same food. The result for the prey is pressure from multiple directions. For the observer, it looks coordinated. For the fish, it may simply be everyone trying to get a bite before the food is gone. This is where the phrase frenzy makes some sense, even if it exaggerates the psychology. The pace can become so quick that separate actions blur. The water may cloud, the prey may struggle, the fish may flash and vanish, the sound and motion build. In that moment, the swarm has become self-sustaining, at least briefly. The food draws fish. The fish damage the food. The damage releases more cues. More cues hold attention. The group's movement attracts more movement. Competition keeps the pace high. The frenzy is not a mood, it is a loop, and swarming is the shape that loop takes in space. There is a useful comparison with a flock of birds descending on scattered grain. At first, a few birds notice. Others see them land. More arrive. The feeding becomes crowded. Birds hop in, peck, move away and return. Wings flap, bodies jostle, and the whole scene looks chaotic, though each bird is simply trying to eat. Replace pecking with cutting bites, grain with flesh or carrion, air with water, and the mood becomes much less suitable for a park bench, but the group logic is similar. Food plus visibility of feeding plus competition can create rapid gathering. The piranha version frightens us because the tool is sharper, and the water hides the details. The bite itself is efficient because the teeth meet like blades. Interlocking triangular teeth allow piranhas to shear. This is different from teeth meant only for gripping slippery prey. A gripping tooth holds, a shearing tooth cuts. Cutting lets a fish take from food larger than itself. That is a huge advantage in a river where carrion, injured animals and larger fish may provide food that cannot be swallowed whole. It also allows feeding from fins and tails. A fin is not a full meal by itself, but repeated fin nipping can provide nutrition. In a frenzy, the same cutting ability becomes more visible and more dramatic because many fish are using it in the same small space. Now, it may be tempting to imagine that piranhas bite anything in front of them during a frenzy, but even here, there is selectivity. They tend to direct bites toward exposed, soft, accessible tissue or moving edges. A hard shell, thick hide, bone, or awkward angle may be less useful. If a piece can be removed cleanly, it is more attractive than a surface that resists. This is practical. Animals do not waste effort on impossible bites if easier bites are available. Even in a fast event, the body favours what works. The fish's mouth meets the food, pressure is applied, teeth slice, and the fish turns away with the piece. It is quick because the anatomy is specialised for quickness. The jaw muscles deserve a moment as well. A strong bite is not only about tooth sharpness, it depends on muscle arrangement, jaw leverage, skull shape, and how force is delivered through the teeth. In piranhas, powerful muscles attach to a short, stout lower jaw, helping produce that forceful shearing bite. For their size, this is a remarkable feeding system. Again, this does not make them supernatural, it makes them well adapted. A piranha is not large, but it is built to make its bite count. And in a swarm, many countable bites can happen in a short time. The teeth also need maintenance. Fish teeth can wear, break, or be replaced depending on the species and dental system. In piranhas, tooth rows are important because the bite depends on alignment. A broken or missing tooth could reduce shearing efficiency. The mouth is a working tool, not a display case. In the wild, tools wear out. Evolution has had to solve that problem in many animals, from sharks replacing teeth to rodents growing incisors. With piranhas, the visual neatness of the teeth is part of the fear, but their functional alignment is part of the science. They cut well because they meet well. During a feeding frenzy, the swarm and the bite reinforce each other. The swarm puts many mouths near the food. The bite makes each contact productive. Productive contacts release more cues. More cues keep the swarm engaged. This is why a piranha feeding event can reduce soft tissue quickly under the right conditions, not because each fish is huge, not because the fish are possessed by some special river madness, because the system is efficient. Many small, sharp, repeated actions can do what one large action might not. A saw cuts a tree not by being one enormous tooth, but by repeating many smaller cuts. A group of piranhas feeding rapidly works by a similar principle, though with more splashing and considerably less carpentry. Not every fish in the swarm has the same role at every moment. Some are active biters, some are waiting for access, some are circling, some may be smaller and more cautious. Some may be displaced by larger individuals. If the food breaks apart, the group may split into smaller clusters. If a piece drifts away, several fish may follow it, creating a second centre of activity. A frenzy can therefore have a shifting geography. One centre becomes two. A tight ball becomes a scattered chase. A surface disturbance moves downstream. The pattern changes as the food changes. This is another reason the event is hard to describe from one angle. We see the surface. The fish experience the whole volume of water. Some action happens below the visible disturbance. Some bites occur where the water is clouded. Some fish may be feeding out of sight, deeper or behind cover. The surface is only the visible skin of the event. Beneath it, the swarm is rearranging itself in depth, angle, and distance. A patch of boiling water may be the top of a much more complex shape. The science of swarming also helps explain why feeding frenzies stop. If they were simply madness, you might expect them to continue until something impossible happened. But they fade when the feedback loop weakens. The food is consumed or scattered. The scent decreases. The prey stops moving. Fish become satiated or lose access. A larger disturbance causes them to scatter. Competition no longer pays. The group loosens. Individuals drift away. The same local rules that created the swarm can dissolve it. If neighbours stop rushing, if cues fade, if the centre no longer rewards approach, the pattern breaks apart. The river returns to scattered motion. This fading can happen surprisingly quickly. A surface that looked alive with flashing bodies may smooth within moments. That does not mean the event was imaginary. It means the conditions that held the swarm together disappeared. This is often how collective behaviour works. A flock rests when the alarm passes. A crowd slows when the doorway clears. Fish settle when the signal fades. The frenzy is temporary because the forces producing it are temporary. Hunger remains, perhaps, but the particular opportunity is gone. There is something important hidden in that temporary nature. It shows us that the piranha feeding frenzy is not the animal's default state. It is a short-lived pattern assembled from cues, bodies, and opportunity. When those elements are strong, the pattern appears. When they weaken, it disappears. This makes it no less real, but much less mythical. A thunderstorm is real, but the sky is not always storming. A traffic jam is real, but the road is not always jammed. A piranha feeding frenzy is real, but the river is not always a frenzy waiting to happen. The bite too should be understood as part of a feeding strategy, not a personality. We often speak of animals with sharp teeth as if the teeth reveal character, but teeth reveal diet, ancestry, and function. A piranha does not bite because it is mean. It bites because that is how its body turns food into energy. In a feeding event, the speed and number of bites can feel shocking, but each bite is still only a fish doing the small mechanical act it is built to do. The horror comes from scale and repetition. One bite is alarming. Many bites from many fish, in quick succession, become a story people repeat for generations. And yet, if we look carefully, the frenzy is not as messy as it first appears. It has stages: detection, approach, first contact, escalation, swarming, repeated biting, competition, reduction of food, decline. These stages may unfold quickly, but they are there. The science lets us slow the scene down. It lets us see the hidden order inside the churn. It also lets us see why the most frightening stories are often built from real pieces arranged without context. Sharp teeth, yes. Strong bite, yes. Group feeding, yes. Rapid tissue removal under certain conditions, yes. Constant desire to attack anything alive, no. That last part belongs more to cinema than to the fish. So when we talk about swarming and biting, we are really talking about two kinds of efficiency meeting in one moment. The efficiency of the group and the efficiency of the mouth. The group finds, gathers, and competes. The mouth cuts, removes, and makes each contact count. Together they can create a feeding event that looks much larger than the individual fish involved. This is what makes piranhas so memorable. Not size, not supernatural aggression, combination. Many small animals, each equipped with a specialized bite, responding quickly to the same opportunity. Picture it again from within the water. The scent has drawn them close. The first bites have opened the food source. The prey or carcass is now the center of a small, fast-moving storm of bodies. Fish enter the center and vanish out the side. The water shivers with pressure waves. A silver flank flashes. A red belly turns. Teeth meet flesh for less than a second. A piece is removed. Another fish takes the gap. A third pulls away as a neighbor cuts across its path. No one is directing the pattern, but the pattern holds because the cues keep coming. For a few moments the swarm is the event. Not one piranha but many. Not one bite but dozens. Not a monster but a process. Each fish is small. Each decision is brief. Each movement is local. Yet together they create the scene that has frightened people for so long. The river seems to boil because so many tiny choices have gathered in one place, and as the food changes, the swarm changes with it. The first rush may give way to smaller clusters. A large piece may break free and drift. Several fish follow. Others remain at the main source. The strongest scent may shift downstream. The surface disturbance may spread or fade. The frenzy is not a fixed circle. It is a moving answer to moving food. It follows the richest cues, the easiest access, the best openings. It lasts only as long as those things remain. What is left afterward depends on the source, the number of fish, the time, and the conditions. Sometimes little may remain of soft tissue. Sometimes the event may be interrupted. Sometimes only a few bites are taken before the fish scatter. Sometimes scavenging continues more quietly after the dramatic rush has passed. The clean skeleton image is part truth and part theatrical simplification. In nature, endings are often messier than stories prefer. Bits sink, pieces drift. Other scavengers arrive. Microbes continue the work. The piranhas are not the only cleaners in the river. They are simply among the more noticeable ones. The feeding frenzy then is not just about destruction, it is also about transfer. Energy stored in one body becomes available to others. A wounded fish, a dead animal, or discarded scraps become part of the living river again. Piranhas take pieces. Other creatures take other pieces. What is not eaten by large animals is broken down by smaller ones. The scene may look violent, but it is also part of the ordinary recycling of life in water. That does not make it gentle. It makes it ecological, which is nature's way of saying, this is how the bill gets paid. And once we understand the mechanics of the swarm and the bite, the next question becomes surprisingly practical. What are they usually feeding on when no dramatic event is happening? Because the feeding frenzy is the famous scene, but it is not the whole diet. The real menu of piranhas is broader, stranger, and much less cinematic. It includes prey, scraps, fins, insects, invertebrates, carrion, fruit, seeds, and whatever the season and river provide. The teeth may be famous for flesh, but the animal behind them lives in a world where food is varied, seasonal, and often far more ordinary than the legend would like. The teeth may be famous for flesh, but the animal behind them lives in a world where food is varied, seasonal, and often far more ordinary than the legend would like. A piranha's real diet is not one endless scene of splashing water and vanishing animals. Most of the time it is much quieter than that. It is bits and pieces, small fish, insects, worms, crustaceans, snails, fallen fruit, seeds, plant material, carrion, fins, scales, whatever the river loosens, drops, injures, softens, or carries within reach. That may be the most useful way to think of piranha feeding in the wild. Not as a fixed menu, but as a moving set of chances. The river decides a great deal. When it floods, it brings fish into forests. It puts water around tree trunks and roots. It covers leaf litter, insects, fruit, seeds, and small animals that were not underwater before. When it shrinks again, it concentrates fish into smaller channels and pools. The same piranha may live through abundance, crowding, opportunity, and scarcity without ever leaving its home system. Its diet changes because the world around it changes. Nature is not handing out a printed menu. It is dropping things into the water and seeing who notices first. The movie version gives the piranha one appetite. Real piranhas have several. Some feed heavily on fish. Some take fins and scales. Some scavenge from dead animals. Some consume fruit and seeds when they're available. Some eat insects and other small invertebrates that fall, hatch, drift, crawl, or make the unfortunate decision to exist near the surface. Even the red-bellied piranha, the species most often placed at the centre of the famous scary image, is not simply a flesh-only animal. It is an opportunistic feeder. That means it can take advantage of many kinds of food, which is a very sensible way to live in a river that changes its mind with the seasons. Fish are a major part of the story, of course. Piranhas do eat other fish, and sometimes they do so in ways that fit the reputation rather well. They may ambush smaller fish from cover. They may bite weakened or injured fish. They may take pieces from fish that are too large to swallow whole. They may nip fins. They may feed on dead or dying fish. Small fish are common in South American river systems, and a piranha with sharp teeth is well equipped to use them as food when it can. But even here, the feeding is more varied than the simple chase and kill image. A piranha does not always need to swallow a whole fish to benefit from it. Sometimes a fin, a scale, a bite of flesh, or access to carrion is enough. Fin nipping is one of those details that makes the piranha less cartoonish and more biologically interesting. A fin is living tissue. It contains nutrition. It can be bitten from a moving fish. It may regrow after damage, though not without cost to the victim. A piranha that takes a fin piece may get food without fully capturing and killing the other fish. This is not gentle, but it is efficient. It is also quite different from the image of piranhas only attacking in giant groups. A single fish can nip. A few fish can nip. This kind of feeding can happen without any dramatic surface disturbance at all. Somewhere beneath quiet water, one fish loses part of a fin, and another fish gains a meal. No soundtrack, no boiling river, just the small economy of injury and energy. Scales can also become food. Scale feeding may sound oddly specific, but fish scales are not useless armor plates. They contain material that can be eaten, and some fishes specialize in removing them. Among piranhas and their relatives, feeding strategies range widely, and the cutting mouth is useful for more than one kind of meal. This is another reminder that teeth do not only tell us danger, they tell us possibility. A sharp mouth can slice flesh, nip fins, remove scales, open soft fruit, or tear at dead tissue. The tool may be famous for one job, but it can handle several. Insects are another important food source, especially in flooded forests and river margins. Anyone who has spent time near water knows that insects and water have a long, complicated relationship. They land on it, fall into it, hatch from it, skim across it, and occasionally make the error of being visible to something below. Beetles, flies, larvae, ants, termites, grasshoppers, and many other small creatures can become food for fish. During flooding, water reaches into places where insects live in branches, leaves, bark, and soil. A piranha moving through flooded vegetation is not only surrounded by other fish, it is moving through a temporary pantry of small animals that were not designed with underwater escape plans. There is a simple practicality to eating insects. They are small, common, and often available. They do not require a dramatic hunt. They can be picked from the surface or taken as they drift. In the public imagination, a piranha eating an insect feels almost disappointing, like seeing a feared warrior quietly buttering toast. But for the fish, the insect is energy. Nature does not care whether a meal supports the brand image. A floating beetle is food, a fallen ant is food, a wriggling larva is food. Survival is built from many such ordinary meals: crustaceans, worms, snails, and other aquatic invertebrates also fit into the real diet. These are the small animals living in mud, plants, roots, and shallow water. They may be picked at, bitten, crushed, or swallowed depending on size and species. Again, this is not the feeding frenzy people expect, but it is the daily work of eating. A river is full of small bodies, and small bodies support larger bodies. Piranhas are not separate from that food web. They participate in it from many angles, sometimes as predators, sometimes as scavengers, sometimes as opportunistic foragers taking whatever the current has made available. Carrion is where the famous reputation begins to overlap with a very real ecological role. Dead animals in the water attract scavengers. A fish, bird, mammal, reptile, or other creature that dies near or in the river becomes food for many organisms. Piranhas can be among the first noticeable feeders because their teeth allow them to cut pieces quickly. This is not evil. It is cleanup. It is nutrient transfer. It is the river refusing to waste what has fallen into it. A carcass may seem unpleasant to us, but to the ecosystem it is a rich temporary resource. Piranhas, catfish, turtles, insects, microbes, and many other organisms may all take part in breaking it down. This scavenging role is one of the reasons piranhas matter. They are not only dramatic predators, they help process dead material. In a warm river environment, decomposition can happen quickly, and scavengers speed the movement of nutrients back into living systems. A piece of carrion eaten by a piranha becomes energy for that fish. That fish may later become food for something larger. Waste becomes muscle. Muscle becomes movement. Movement becomes another link in the chain. It is not pretty in the greeting card sense, but it is efficient, and ecosystems are very fond of efficiency. Fallen fruit and seeds may be the most surprising items on the menu for many listeners. A piranha eating fruit sounds almost like a clerical error. The teeth seem wrong for the job. The reputation certainly seems wrong, and yet in flooded forests and river margins, plant material can be abundant. Fruits fall from trees, seeds drop into the water, leaves soften, plant pieces drift. Some piranhas and many of their close relatives use these resources. The broader family that includes piranhas also includes pacus, which are well known for eating fruits and seeds. The line between sharp-toothed fish and plant-eating river forager is not as emotionally neat as the myth suggests. The flooded forest is important here. During wet periods, water spreads into areas where trees are fruiting. Fish can swim among branches and trunks. Food that would normally fall onto dry ground now falls into water. Many South American fish species take advantage of this seasonal buffet. Seeds and fruits become part of the aquatic food web. Some fish even help disperse seeds by eating fruit and moving through flooded areas. Piranhas are not usually the first animals people think of in that role, but plant matter in their diet reminds us that the river is not divided into meat on one side and plants on the other. It is all mixed together by flooding, current, decay, and opportunity. This seasonal variety also explains why a piranha may behave differently at different times of year. When fruit, seeds, insects, and small prey are plentiful, feeding can be more spread out and less competitive. When water levels fall and animals become concentrated, food may become more contested. Hunger and crowding can make animal protein, carrion, or injured prey more attractive. A feeding frenzy is more likely when conditions push many hungry fish toward the same resource. But on an ordinary day during a food-rich period, a piranha may be eating insects, scraps, plant material, or small prey with very little drama. The teeth are still there. The mood of the river is different. Young piranhas may feed differently from adults. Smaller fish often begin life eating tiny organisms, small invertebrates, and other accessible foods before shifting as they grow. Size changes what an animal can handle. A young fish cannot take the same prey as a larger adult. Its mouth is smaller, its risk is greater. It may spend more time in sheltered areas where tiny food is available, and larger predators are less likely to reach it. Growth opens new feeding options. A larger piranha can take bigger bites, handle tougher foods, compete more effectively, and use its jaw strength in ways a juvenile cannot. So even within one species, the diet is not fixed from birth to adulthood. This is another place where the legend becomes too flat. It gives all piranhas the same behavior at all times. Real animals have life stages. A small piranha is not simply a miniature adult with the same role. It is vulnerable. It is growing. It is feeding within the limits of its size. It may avoid larger members of its own kind. It may feed on small invertebrates, tiny fish, or soft material. As it grows, its place in the food web changes. The teeth become more formidable, the bite becomes more useful, the menu widens. There is also variation between species. The word piranha gathers many fish under one familiar name, but they do not all have identical diets. Some species lean more toward fish. Some are known for fin or scale feeding. Some take more plant material. Some are more solitary. Some are more associated with groups. Some live in different habitats with different food supplies. This diversity is inconvenient for horror stories, which prefer the piranha to be one thing. Science, unfortunately for neat storytelling, keeps finding that animals are more specific than symbols. The diet also depends on where the piranha lives within the river system. A fish in a large channel may encounter different food from one in a floodplain lake or a forested backwater. Current, vegetation, depth, water clarity, and available prey all matter. Near human settlements, scraps, discarded bait, fish cleaning waste, or other food sources may change feeding behaviour. In more remote flooded forest, fallen fruit and insects may be more important during certain periods. In shrinking dry season pools, trapped fish and carrion may become easier to exploit. The piranha's menu is local. It is written by habitat. Feeding time can vary as well. Some piranhas may be active at particular times of day, depending on size, safety, light, temperature, and prey behaviour. Dawn and dusk can be useful feeding periods for many animals because visibility changes and prey may be moving. In bright daylight, some fish may remain closer to cover. At night, other senses become more important. We should be careful not to imagine every piranha constantly patrolling like a security guard with a grudge. Much of its activity may be timed around when feeding is safest and most profitable. The idea of profit may sound odd when applied to a fish, but energy is the basic currency of animal life. A meal is profitable if it gives more energy than it costs to find, capture, process, and digest, while not adding too much risk. A fallen fruit may be easy and safe. A live healthy fish may be harder and risky. Carrion may be rich but may attract competitors. Fin nipping may be quick but requires getting close to another moving animal. Insects may be small but numerous. A piranha's diet is shaped by these trade-offs, even if the fish is not consciously calculating them. Natural selection has done much of the accounting over time, and the body behaves accordingly. This is why opportunistic feeding is such a powerful strategy. A specialist may be excellent at one kind of meal, but vulnerable when that meal is scarce. An opportunist can shift. If insects are abundant, eat insects. If fruit is falling, take fruit. If a fish is wounded, bite the fish. If carrion appears, scavenge. If fins are accessible, nip fins. Such flexibility is especially useful in environments that change dramatically between wet and dry seasons. The Amazon and surrounding river systems are not static aquariums. They are moving, swelling, shrinking, flooding, warming, cooling, and constantly rearranging the food supply. The piranha's famous teeth therefore do not lock it into one narrow identity. They allow flexibility. A cutting bite is useful on many foods. It can open tissue, remove pieces, cut plant matter, and take small parts from larger sources. That may be one reason the teeth seem so effective. They are not only weapons, they are multi-purpose feeding tools. A person sees the teeth and thinks attack. The fish uses them for whatever the day provides. There is a quiet irony in the fact that piranhas are sometimes described as bloodthirsty, when a good part of their real feeding may involve foods that do not bleed at all. Seeds do not bleed. Fruit does not bleed. Insects may leak, but not in the cinematic way. Snails, worms, scraps, scales, and carrion all form a messier and more practical menu than the legend allows. The piranha does not care whether the meal is impressive. A fish trying to survive does not require drama. It requires calories, protein, fat, minerals, and enough successful feeding to make it through breeding, growth, danger, and the leaner stretches of the year. And the piranha is not only a feeder, it is food. Larger fish, caimans, river dolphins, birds, and other predators may prey on piranhas. Humans catch and eat them too in many places. This matters because it reminds us that piranhas do not feed from a position of invincibility. They are part of the exchange. They eat smaller or weaker animals, and larger animals may eat them. Their sharp teeth do not remove them from the food web. They only give them a particular way of participating in it. The creature that frightens us from above the water may itself be watching shadows from below. This risk can affect diet. Feeding in open water may expose the fish to predators. Feeding near cover may be safer. Scavenging at a carcass may be rewarding, but may also attract larger animals. Taking small foods quietly may be safer than joining a frantic group. Group feeding can reduce individual risk in some ways, but increase competition and accidental injury in others. The choice of food is therefore tied to the choice of place and timing. A piranha eating an insect near cover may be making a very different risk decision from a piranha rushing into a crowded feeding event around a carcass. Human fear tends to focus on the rare and dramatic possibility of piranhas eating large animals. In reality, large animals are not the everyday food source. Larger feeding events can happen around carcasses, injured animals, or unusual conditions. But the regular diet is made from smaller, more available items. This is true of many predators and scavengers. The dramatic event gets remembered because it is rare, visible, and emotional. The ordinary meals disappear into the background. Nobody tells a thrilling story about a piranha eating a beetle unless the beetle has an unusually good publicist. The diet also changes how we should understand the feeding frenzy itself. If piranhas eat many things, then a frenzy is not proof of a permanent hunger for large prey. It is one possible feeding mode among many. The same fish that calmly takes insects or plant matter may join a fast group feeding event when a strong source appears. This is not hypocrisy. It is flexibility. A person may eat soup quietly on Monday and then behave with surprising intensity when free cake appears at work. We contain multitudes. So, apparently do piranhas. The real diet also explains why piranhas are important to their ecosystems. By feeding on fish, they influence prey populations. By scavenging, they help process dead animals. By eating fruits and seeds, some may participate in the seasonal movement of plant material through the flooded forest food web. By becoming food themselves, they support larger predators. Their role is not simply to frighten mammals who stand too close to the bank. They are active parts of nutrient flow, predator-prey dynamics, scavenging, and seasonal river life. This broader role makes the piranha more interesting, not less. The monster version is easy. It has one note: teeth, blood, panic, bones. The real version has many notes, though we will keep them neatly spoken rather than sung. It is an animal whose diet changes with age, species, season, habitat, hunger, and opportunity. It can be cautious, bold, predatory, scavenging, plant-eating, fin-nipping, insect-taking, and group-feeding depending on what the river presents. That is a much richer animal than the simple villain. It also makes the river itself more visible. To understand what piranhas eat, we have to notice the fallen fruit, the insect swarms, the dead fish, the flood pulse, the dry season pools, the roots, the muddy banks, the smaller fish, the hidden predators, and the human scraps. The piranha's diet becomes a map of its environment. Every item in the stomach tells us something about what was available, what was risky, what season it may have been, and how the fish was living. A stomach is not just a stomach, it is a field report, though admittedly one written in partially digested form. So, the next time the word piranha brings up the familiar picture of a boiling river, it is useful to place that picture beside another one. A piranha picking at a fallen fruit in a flooded forest. A piranha taking an insect from the surface. A small piranha feeding on tiny invertebrates near shelter. A group of piranhas scavenging from a dead fish. A lone fish nipping a fin and disappearing into cover. A school holding nervously together because something larger is nearby. All of these scenes belong to the same larger truth. The feeding frenzy is real, but it is only one page from a much longer, more ordinary feeding life. And that ordinary feeding life is exactly what the myths tend to erase. They turn varied behaviour into one frightening habit. They turn opportunism into bloodlust. They turn seasonal hunger into constant aggression. They take a fish that eats fish, insects, crustaceans, carrion, fruit, seeds, and plant matter, and reduce it to a single moving mouth. It is a powerful image, but it is not a complete one. The real piranha is still sharp. It is still capable of fast, intense feeding. It can still bite, and in the wrong situation that bite can matter very much. But it is also an animal shaped by a changing menu. Its feeding is practical before it is dramatic. It follows food, not reputation. If the river gives it insects, it may eat insects. If the forest drops fruit, it may take fruit. If a fish is wounded, it may bite. If a carcass appears, it may scavenge. If nothing worth the risk appears, it may wait, hide, or move with the group through water that looks quiet from above. And as that quiet returns, the story begins to separate from the story people tell. The real diet pulls us away from the monster and back toward the animal. It shows us a fish that is not innocent, not evil, not harmless, not supernatural, but adaptive. A river animal with a sharp mouth and a flexible menu. A creature that became famous for its most dramatic feeding moments, while spending much of its life doing something far less theatrical. That gap between the real fish and the famous fish is where the next layer waits. because once an animal has been turned into a legend, the legend often keeps feeding long after the facts have had their say. Movies, rumours, travel stories, headlines, and nervous imaginations have all taken their bites from the piranha's image. And in some ways, the myth has become its own kind of feeding frenzy, with each retelling tearing off a small piece of truth and leaving something sharper, simpler, and much less accurate behind. That gap between the real fish and the famous fish is where the next layer waits. Because once an animal has been turned into a legend, the legend often keeps feeding long after the facts have had their say. Movies, rumours, travel stories, headlines, aquarium demonstrations, and nervous imaginations have all taken their bites from the piranha's image. And in some ways, the myth has become its own kind of feeding frenzy, with each retelling tearing off a small piece of truth and leaving something sharper, simpler, and much less accurate behind. The piranha's public image did not become frightening only because the fish has teeth. Plenty of animals have teeth. Some have much larger teeth. Some have venom, claws, speed, camouflage, or the deeply unsettling ability to appear in your kitchen when you thought the window was closed. The piranha became famous because its danger seemed compact, hidden, and collective. It was not one large predator that could be seen from a distance. It was the idea of many small predators beneath dark water, waiting where a person could not look clearly. That is a very efficient fear. It does not need much evidence once it has entered the mind. A single shark fin cutting across the sea is frightening because it points to one large animal. A piranha story is different. It suggests that the danger is everywhere in the water at once. One fish, perhaps manageable. 10 fish, troubling. 100 fish. Now the imagination has left the room and locked the door behind it. This is one reason the piranha became such a useful creature for adventure stories. It turned the river itself into a threat. Not the bank, not the jungle, not one visible predator. The water, the place people must cross, wash in, fish from, or travel through. Once the river is imagined as full of hidden teeth, even a calm surface looks suspicious. That suspicion is powerful because humans are already uneasy around water we cannot see into. A clear swimming pool feels very different from a dark river, even if the river is perfectly ordinary and the pool contains 3 children doing questionable things with inflatable toys. Clear water gives us control. Murky water asks us to trust. Most people do not enjoy trusting a place where something can touch their ankle before they know it exists. Add piranhas to that feeling, and the imagination starts building its own wildlife documentary, usually with very poor peer review. The myth often begins with a simple claim: piranhas will attack anything that enters the water. It is a neat claim, easy to remember, easy to repeat. Also wrong in the way many neat claims are wrong. Piranhas do not attack everything. They respond to conditions: hunger, crowding, scent, movement, injury, food availability, season, species, and local behavior all matter. A person entering piranha habitat is not automatically treated like dinner. In many regions where piranhas live, people still use rivers. They fish, paddle, bathe, travel, and work near the water. That does not mean there is no risk. It means the risk is specific. The myth removes the specifics because specifics slow down a scary story. The second common myth is that piranhas can strip a large animal to bone in seconds under any ordinary condition. This one has become almost glued to the fish. It is the classic image. Something falls in. The water churns. A moment later, only bones remain, cleaned so neatly that one suspects the piranhas have also trained in museum preparation. The truth is less tidy. Piranhas can feed quickly in groups, especially on soft tissue when many hungry fish are concentrated around an accessible food source. But speed depends on the size of the food, the number of fish, their hunger, the water conditions, and whether the food is trapped, dead, wounded, or able to escape. There is no universal timer. Nature is not running a kitchen challenge. A small piece of meat placed among hungry piranhas in a confined setting may vanish very quickly. A large healthy animal moving strongly through open water is an entirely different situation. A carcass trapped in place during a time of high fish density is different again. The myth takes the most dramatic possible scene and presents it as the normal one. That is like judging all human eating habits by watching people at a free hotel breakfast where the waffle machine is working and everyone has a train to catch. Real, perhaps. Representative, not quite. Another popular claim is that piranhas are attracted from vast distances by a single drop of blood. The phrase sounds good. A single drop. The entire river turns. Very cinematic. But water is not a perfect delivery system. Chemical cues spread through currents, dilute, break apart, and move unevenly. Fish near the right current path may detect something. Fish far away or outside the scent plume may detect nothing at all. Blood can be a feeding cue because it suggests injury, but it is not a magic summons. The piranha still has to be close enough, hungry enough, and interested enough to respond. It may investigate, it may not. It may respond more strongly if the scent is paired with struggling movement. As usual, the real answer is less dramatic and more useful. Then there is the idea that piranhas are fearless. This may be the most unfair myth of all, because the real fish is often quite cautious. Many piranhas are themselves prey for larger animals. Caimans, river dolphins, large fish, birds, and other predators may all turn a piranha into a meal. Being armed does not mean being safe. A small fish with sharp teeth is still small. In aquariums, piranhas can be shy, nervous, and easily startled. In the wild, sudden movement or shadows may make them scatter. That does not fit the image of a relentless killer, but it fits life in a river. Boldness gets food. Caution keeps you alive. The fish must balance both. Movies usually remove that balance because caution is inconvenient for action scenes. A frightening animal in a film must appear when the story needs danger and attack when the scene needs energy. It does not have time to behave like a real animal, considering risk, current, water temperature, group spacing, and whether a larger predator is nearby. Film animals often become symbols. The shark becomes the sea's revenge. The snake becomes betrayal with scales. The piranha becomes the river's hidden punishment for anyone who enters at the wrong moment, usually after ignoring a warning from someone who definitely should have been listened to. The film version also tends to make piranhas move like one single creature. They arrive as a cloud. They attack as one mind. They stop only when the scene has reached the required level of alarm. Real group behaviour can look coordinated, but it is built from individual reactions. Each fish responds to cues and neighbours. There is no evil, conference below the surface. No central command. No piranha at the back saying, "Excellent work everyone, proceed to ankle formation." The swarm can still be effective, but it is not a military unit. It is a temporary pattern created by hunger, opportunity, and local responses. This is a difficult truth for storytelling because it reduces the villain. Humans like villains with intention. A creature acting from hunger is not a villain. A creature acting from instinct is not a villain. A creature doing what its body evolved to do is not plotting against us. But stories often prefer nature to have motives we understand. The piranha becomes cruel because cruelty is easier to fear than appetite. It becomes angry because anger is easier to recognize than ecological pressure. It becomes a monster because monsters are easier to market than flexible, omnivorous freshwater fish with seasonal feeding habits. And yet, the monster version is not completely invented. This is why it survives. Myths that contain no truth at all usually fall apart quickly. The piranha myth has strong material at its centre. The teeth are real. The bite is real. Group feeding is real. Injuries to humans and animals are real. Feeding events can be fast and intense. Under the right conditions, piranhas can remove flesh quickly. These facts give the myth its bones, if you will excuse the choice of word. The exaggeration grows around them. A reasonable warning becomes a terrifying certainty. A specific risk becomes a universal rule. A feeding event becomes an identity. This happens with many animals. Bats are not trying to fly into your hair. Wolves do not spend every evening discussing grandmothers in cottages. Sharks do not patrol beaches with personal grudges. Spiders are not waiting for you specifically, despite the one in the bathroom making a strong case for suspicion. These animals can be dangerous in certain ways, but their reputations often grow beyond their behaviour. We take a feature, enlarge it, simplify it, and repeat it until the animal becomes a symbol more than a living thing. The piranha's symbol is especially strong because it combines hunger with speed. A large predator may kill one animal. A piranha swarm in the popular version suggests many mouths working at once. This triggers a different fear. It is the fear of being overwhelmed, not just attacked. Humans are deeply sensitive to that idea. A crowd, a swarm, a flood, a fire, a wave. Things that arrive in numbers can feel harder to reason with. A single animal might be watched. A group beneath water becomes almost impossible to track. The mind does not know where to put its attention, so it puts it everywhere. The myth also makes the piranha seem unnaturally wasteful, as if it attacks for the sake of attack. Real feeding is not wasteful in that way. A piranha is trying to gain energy. If there is no food value, or too much risk, or weak cues, it may not bother. It does not need to bite because it enjoys drama. The idea of animals enjoying violence is usually a human projection, and not one of our better hobbies. Feeding may look violent because flesh is involved, but the purpose is survival. A piranha does not hate the fish it bites. It does not hold a grudge against a piece of carrion. It does not see a toe and think, "At last, my old enemy." It responds to signs, textures, movement, and opportunity. One reason myths persist is that people remember exceptions more than ordinary behaviour. A bite incident is memorable. A feeding demonstration is memorable. A dramatic video is memorable. 100 days when piranhas do not attack anyone are not memorable at all. Calm does not travel as well as shock. No one rushes to tell a friend, "I stood near a river and nothing happened." Though perhaps they should. It would make public understanding of wildlife much more accurate, if not very exciting at dinner. There is also a commercial side to fear. Fear sells. It sells films, books, aquarium exhibits, headlines, and online clips. A video titled "Piranhas Behaving Like Ordinary Fish for Most of the Afternoon" may be scientifically valuable, but it is unlikely to conquer the internet. A clip of churning water and fast feeding will. Over time, the most dramatic images become the most available images, and the most available images become what people think is normal. The animal's reputation is shaped not by frequency, but by visibility. This is why context matters so much. A group of piranhas feeding on meat in a controlled setting may show real biting ability, but it does not show the full range of wild behaviour. A film scene may be entertaining, but it is not a field study. A dramatic travel story may describe something that happened, but not necessarily how often it happens or under what exact conditions. Without context, each piece of evidence floats free, and the imagination ties it into the old myth. Teeth plus blood plus movement equals constant danger. Simple, memorable, and incomplete. The truth beneath the surface is not that piranhas are harmless. That would just be the myth turned upside down, and upside-down myths are still myths. The truth is that piranhas are capable animals with a specific set of feeding tools, living in environments where opportunity matters. Their danger is real in some situations. People should be careful in areas where piranhas are common, especially with bleeding wounds, food scraps, fish cleaning activity, low water nesting areas, or confined pools. But careful is not the same as terrified. Respect is not the same as panic. The real animal deserves both accuracy and distance, which is also good advice for many relatives during holiday meals. Movies often miss another important truth. Piranhas do not exist alone. A film may show only the fish and the victim. The real river contains an entire food web. Piranhas compete with other fish. They scavenge alongside other animals. They are hunted by larger predators. They feed on insects, fish, carrion, fruit, seeds, and plant material. They respond to floods and droughts. They breed, hide, school, scatter, and wait. The feeding frenzy is one event inside a much larger life. Reducing piranhas to that event is like reducing a person to the way they behave when someone says there is only one slice of cake left. Revealing perhaps, but not complete. The more we learn, the more ordinary the piranha becomes, but ordinary does not mean boring. Ordinary nature is often stranger than fiction because it has to work. A movie monster can behave however the script requires. A real fish must survive real water. It must sense food without clear sight. It must avoid predators. It must use energy efficiently. It must respond to seasonal change. It must feed enough to grow and reproduce. Every behavior has costs. Every movement matters. That is more interesting than pure menace, because it shows us how the animal fits into the world rather than simply jumping out of it to frighten us. There is also something revealing about our own role in the myth. We often make animals frightening by imagining ourselves as the centre of their attention. The piranha is not thinking about us most of the time. It is thinking, if we can use that word loosely, through its senses and instincts, about food, safety, and nearby movement. Humans enter the story when we enter the water, throw scraps, create feeding sites, film demonstrations, or tell stories. In many cases, the piranha's most famous behaviours have been shaped, triggered, or exaggerated by human presence. We create the scene, then blame the fish for performing too well. The truth is also quieter than the myth in another way. Many piranha encounters are not dramatic at all. Fish may move away. They may ignore large animals. They may hover near cover. They may feed on small items. They may be present without being visible. A person can be near piranha habitat and never see the fish. This hidden ordinariness is hard to accept once an animal has become famous for danger. We expect the famous creature to behave famously. When it does not, we may not notice. The myth waits for the exceptional moment and then says, "There, you see, that is what it always was." A fairer view lets the exceptional remain exceptional. Yes, piranhas can feed intensely. Yes, they can be dangerous. Yes, their teeth are not for decoration. But no, they are not the tireless river demons of the old stories. They are not constantly searching for humans. They are not controlled by the scent of one drop of blood from impossible distances. They are not fearless. They are not all the same. They are not only carnivores. They are not one giant appetite spread across a river. They are fish. Highly adapted, sharp-toothed, flexible, sometimes alarming fish. There is a pleasure in correcting a myth without removing the wonder. We do not have to make piranhas dull in order to make them real. The real piranha is still impressive. Its bite is efficient. Its group feeding can be intense. Its senses are tuned to water in ways we can barely imagine. Its life is tied to floods, forests, prey, carrion, fruit, and danger from above and below. That is enough. It does not need to be exaggerated into a monster. Nature rarely improves when we make it less true. The movies, then, are not useless. They tell us something, though perhaps more about ourselves than about piranhas. They show how much we fear hidden systems, sudden group movement, and losing control in an environment where we cannot see clearly. They show how one real feature of an animal can become a whole imagined personality. They show how quickly repeated images become belief. And they remind us that fear is a storyteller, a very confident storyteller, not always accurate but rarely boring. Science is a different kind of storyteller. It slows the scene down. It asks what species, what season, what water level, what food source, what behavior, what evidence. It does not remove danger. It places danger in context. It says the piranha is not harmless, but it is not what the myth says either. It says the feeding frenzy is not madness, but a response to cues and opportunity. It says the teeth are real, but so are the fruit, The insects, the scavenging, the schooling, the caution, and the predators that hunt the piranha in return. Beneath the surface, then, the truth is more balanced than the legend. Piranhas are neither river villains nor misunderstood angels with dental concerns. They are animals built for a particular world. In that world, sharp teeth are useful, groups are useful, quick responses are useful, feeding on many different foods is useful, caution is useful. And sometimes when blood, movement, hunger, crowding, and opportunity come together, a feeding frenzy begins. Not because the myth was right about everything, but because even exaggerated myths often begin with one hard little fact. The hard fact in this case is that a small fish with a strong bite can matter. Many small fish with strong bites can matter very much. That is enough to earn respect. It is not enough to justify every nightmare. The river is not waiting to punish every creature that touches it. It is doing what rivers do, carrying signals, hiding lives, moving food, changing with season and weather, holding animals that know how to read it better than we do. And after all the stories, all the films, all the warnings and exaggerations, we return to the same quiet place, a patch of water, a school of fish, a body built for cutting, but also for sensing, fleeing, foraging, scavenging and surviving. The famous monster fades a little, and the real animal comes into focus. It is smaller than the myth, but more complete, less simple, but more useful to understand, still sharp, still serious, still part of a living river that has never needed our imagination to make it strange. From here, the final step is not to ask whether piranhas are good or bad, dangerous or harmless, monster or myth. Those questions are too narrow for a real animal. The better question is what their behaviour tells us about nature itself. Because a feeding frenzy, when we strip away the movie music, is also a lesson in balance. It shows how quickly opportunity can move through a group, how hunger changes caution, how dead matter becomes food, how fear grows from half-truths, and how even the most frightening mouth in the river belongs to a creature trying to live inside a system much larger than itself. The better question is what their behaviour tells us about nature itself. Because a feeding frenzy, when we strip away the movie music, is also a lesson in balance. It shows how quickly opportunity can move through a group, how hunger changes caution, how dead matter becomes food, how fear grows from half-truths, and how even the most frightening mouth in the river belongs to a creature trying to live inside a system much larger than itself. That may be the most useful place to leave the piranha. Not as a villain, not as a harmless curiosity, and not as the star of every exaggerated river story ever told, but as a working part of a living place. Teeth are only one part of that work. They are the part we notice first, because teeth speak very clearly to soft skin. But the piranha is also eyes, muscle, nerves, smell, movement, caution, hunger, and habit. It is a fish, shaped by flooded forests, dry season pools, small prey, larger predators, fallen fruit, dead animals, and currents that carry signals faster than any headline ever could. And the river itself is not just a setting, it is part of the behaviour. That is easy to forget when we talk about an animal with such a strong reputation. We pull it out of the water in our minds and examine it as if it exists alone. Sharp teeth, strong bite, group feeding, dangerous name. But the real animal does not live in a clean diagram. It lives in water that rises and falls. It lives under branches, among roots, in channels, lakes, floodplains, shadows, heat, mud, bubbles, and moving light. It feeds when food appears. It hides when danger comes close. It follows signals we cannot feel. It responds to pressure waves, scent trails, and the quick turn of another fish nearby. A feeding frenzy looks like chaos because we arrive late to the story. We see the surface break and think that everything began there. But the beginning was smaller and quieter. A wound, a scent, a struggle, a fish turning, another fish noticing, a first bite, more scent, more motion, more bodies entering the same small space. The frenzy is not a random explosion. It is a process that becomes visible only after several invisible steps have already happened. Once we know that, the scene changes. It is still intense. It is still sharp. It still deserves respect. But it is no longer mysterious in quite the same way. There is comfort in that kind of understanding, not because it makes the piranha safe, but because it makes the fear more accurate. A vague fear can grow without limit. It can fill a whole river, a whole continent, a whole imagination. Accurate fear has edges. It says, be careful in certain waters, under certain conditions, around fish scraps, open wounds, low water pools, nesting areas, and places where animals have learned to associate humans with food. It does not say every ripple is waiting for you. It does not say every piranha is a monster with a schedule to keep. It allows caution without panic, and that is a much better companion. The piranha's teeth still matter. They matter because they are effective. A bite from the wrong fish in the wrong place at the wrong time can injure. A group feeding event can be fast. A carcass or wounded animal can be reduced quickly when many hungry fish gather. Those facts do not need to be softened. Nature does not become more interesting when we pretend it is gentle. But it also does not become more truthful when we make it cruel. The piranha does not bite because it is evil. It bites because biting is how it feeds, tests, competes, and survives. The meaning we attach to that bite belongs mostly to us. And perhaps that is why piranhas have held our attention for so long. They make us face the difference between danger and malice. A dangerous animal is not always a malicious one. A frightening scene is not always an angry one. A feeding frenzy is not revenge, hatred, or madness. It is hunger, chemical cues, group movement, competition, and anatomy meeting in one place. It is life-taking energy from life, which is not unusual in nature, even when the details are uncomfortable. The river does not pause to make the process polite. That does not mean we have to enjoy the sight of it. Some parts of nature are difficult to look at. A piranha feeding frenzy can be one of them. It can seem harsh, quick, and almost too efficient. But if we look only with disgust or fear, we miss the larger pattern. Dead animals do not remain outside the system. Injured animals become opportunities for scavengers and predators. Small fish feed larger fish. Larger fish feed birds, reptiles, mammals, and people. Plant material falls into the water and becomes part of animal bodies. Nutrients move, energy moves, nothing stands still for long. The piranha is one set of teeth in that wider movement. There is a quiet usefulness in scavengers and opportunists. They do the work that many people would rather not think about. They clear what has died. They turn waste into movement. They make sure that a body in the water does not remain only a body in the water. Fish, insects, turtles, microbes, and countless other organisms take their portions and pass that energy onward. The piranha may be among the more dramatic participants because it can cut quickly and feed in groups, but it is not separate from the cleanup. It is part of the river's practical housekeeping, though perhaps not the kind anyone would hire for a peaceful cottage weekend. And then there is the balance of being both predator and prey. That may be the fact that most clearly pulls the piranha down from legend and back into life. It eats, but it can be eaten. It frightens smaller animals, but larger animals can frighten it. Its schooling behaviour is not only about feeding, it is also about safety. Its caution is not a contradiction of its bite. It is the reason it survives long enough to use that bite. A piranha is powerful only within limits. Outside those limits, it is simply another fish in a river full of mouths. That is often how nature works. Strength is local. A sharp tooth helps in one situation, but not every situation. Speed helps in open water, but not if there is nowhere to turn. A group helps with safety and feeding, but it can also attract attention. Hunger pushes action, but action carries risk. Every advantage has a cost somewhere. The piranha's reputation often ignores that. It imagines a creature with only advantages. Real animals are not like that. They are made of trade-offs. A strong bite requires a certain head shape. A deep body helps quick turning, but it is not built for endless high-speed pursuit. Group living helps reduce individual risk, but it creates competition for food. Responding to blood and movement helps locate meals, but it may also draw the fish toward danger. These trade-offs are not flaws. They are the normal terms of living. Every animal is a compromise between what it needs to do and what it must avoid. The piranha's compromise happens to include teeth that humans remember very well. So after all this, what really happens during a piranha feeding frenzy? A food signal enters the water. Piranhas nearby detect it through smell, movement, and the behavior of other fish. They approach, often with caution at first. One bite opens the food source further, chemical cues strengthen, movement increases, other fish join, competition rises, individuals dart in, take pieces, turn away and return when they can. The water may churn because many bodies are making quick overlapping movements in a small space. The event continues while the food source remains rewarding and the signals remain strong. Then it fades. The fish scatter, settle, or move on. The river surface smooths again. That is the real shape of it. Not a spell, not a curse, not the river suddenly deciding to become cruel. A chain of cause and effect. Hunger, scent, motion, group response, cutting teeth, and opportunity. The old stories were not built from nothing, but they were built too large. They took a real feeding behavior and turned it into a constant identity. They turned a sharp animal into a simple monster. The truth is more specific and more useful. Piranhas can be dangerous, but they are not danger itself. There is a lesson there beyond this one fish. Many animals become symbols before we understand them. We meet the fear first. We meet the story first. The real animal comes later if we make time for it. Sharks, snakes, spiders, wolves, bats, crocodiles and piranhas have all had to carry more imagination than their bodies can reasonably hold. Some are dangerous. Some are not very dangerous at all. Most are simply trying to solve the old animal problems. Find food, avoid death, reproduce, rest, and respond to a changing world without making too many fatal mistakes. Piranhas solve those problems in a way that looks dramatic to us because their tools are dramatic. But a tool is not a personality. Teeth are not evil. A feeding frenzy is not a moral failure. It is not pleasant, but much of nature is not arranged for our comfort. The important thing is to see clearly, to know what is real, what is exaggerated, what is rare, what is common, and what conditions turn ordinary behavior into something intense. And maybe that is why this topic belongs here, in a quiet place of slow science, even though it began with a fish famous for panic. Because understanding can soften the edges of fear. It does not remove the teeth. It does not pretend the river is harmless. It simply lets the animal become itself again. A piranha in its own water, among its own signals, doing what a piranha does. Not waiting for a movie scene, not living inside a headline, not hunting for a role in our nightmares, just feeding, fleeing, schooling, biting and surviving. Think again of that river near dusk. The water is not empty. It never was. Small fish move in the current. Insects touch the surface. Roots hold the bank in place. Somewhere, a fruit drops from a branch. Somewhere else, a dead fish begins to drift. A larger shadow passes, and a school tightens for a moment before loosening again. The piranhas are there, perhaps unseen, perhaps close, perhaps farther away. They are not doing anything dramatic. They are waiting, sensing, adjusting. The river carries information past them, and most of it does not become a frenzy. That may be the part worth remembering. Most moments do not become the famous moment. Most water does not boil. Most signals fade. Most animals continue their small work unnoticed. The feeding frenzy is rare enough to be dramatic and real enough to deserve respect, But it is only one behaviour in a much wider life. A life of ordinary feeding, caution, seasonal change and constant attention to the world moving around them. And now we have followed that behaviour from the reputation to the real animal, from the scent in the water to the first bite, from the swarm to the wild menu, and from the myth back to the living river. We have seen how the story becomes frightening when the facts are stripped of context, and how it becomes more interesting when the context is returned. A piranha feeding frenzy is not just teeth. It is timing. It is place. It is hunger. It is water carrying news from one body to another. It is the sudden gathering of many small decisions around one temporary source of food. So if the word piranha feels a little different now, perhaps that is a good sign. Not safe exactly, not friendly, but clearer. The fish has not changed, only the picture has. The mouth is still sharp, the bite is still efficient, the group can still move fast when conditions invite it, but around that mouth there is now a body. Around that body there is a river. Around that river there is an ecosystem. And around the ecosystem there is our own habit of turning what we fear into something simpler than it really is. As you settle back into your own quiet place, far from the warm currents and flooded forests where these fish live, it may be worth noticing how many things in nature carry two truths at once. A river can be peaceful and dangerous. A predator can be frightening and necessary. A scavenger can seem unpleasant and still be essential. A feeding frenzy can look like chaos and still follow clear biological rules. The world is often like that. Not one thing or the other, but several things together, depending on where you stand and how closely you look. And perhaps that is the real calm at the centre of this sharp little subject. Not that nature is soft, but that it makes sense when we give it enough attention. The piranha is not a monster hiding under the surface. It is not a harmless decoration either. It is a river fish with tools that work. It is part of a food web that has no interest in our myths. It lives by cues, seasons, risks and chances, and when the right conditions come together, it can help turn a patch of quiet water into something fast, bright and deeply memorable. But then the moment passes, the scent thins, the movement slows, the fish drift apart, the water clears or clouds in its ordinary way. The river keeps moving, carrying away the last signs of what happened. No dramatic ending is required. No villain swims off laughing into the dark. Just fish returning to the larger work of being fish, and a river returning to the larger work of being a river. And so, dear listener, we come gently back to the surface. We have spent this time below it, among signals, teeth, swarms, myths and meals, looking at one of the most feared little fish in the world and finding something more specific than fear. We have not removed its sharpness. We have placed that sharpness where it belongs, inside a living system where even the most alarming behaviour has a reason. If you found this slow look beneath the surface calming, interesting, or simply a different way to think about a creature with a very dramatic public image, I would be ever so grateful if you liked the video, subscribed, and shared this quiet corner of curiosity with someone else who enjoys learning without rushing. And before you drift away, tell me, if you like, what water is closest to you tonight? A river, a lake, a sea, a canal, a pond, or maybe just the soft sound of rain against a window. Wherever you are, may your own night be still, your thoughts be gentle, and your waters remain pleasantly free of sudden feeding opportunities. Sleep well, fellow traveller, and may the unseen world beneath the surface feel a little clearer, a little less frightening, and a little more real.